order the Thursday, October 10th, 2019 meeting of the Royal Oak Zoning Board of Appeals. While the board does not write the zoning ordinance, but does have the authority to grant relief from it where practical difficulty or unnecessary hardship would result, the board will vote on each agenda item following a public hearing. Use variance requests require a minimum of 6 affirmative votes in order to grant the requested variances. Non-use variance requests require a minimum of 5 affirmative votes in order to grant the variances. If you would like to request that the board table or adjourn your case due to the absence of a full board, please inform the chairperson immediately after the public hearing, and we are down 1 member this evening. Petitioners shall do their best to limit their presentations to 10 minutes. Each participant in the public hearing shall do their best to limit their comments to 3 minutes, which moves us along to the minutes for the September 12th meeting.
Motion to approve.
We have a motion.
Support.
We have a second by Mr. Klatt. Any corrections, additions, deletions? Not seeing any, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That moves us along to our first and only item of old unfinished business, which is the AT&T tower located at 421 South Williams. I understand that they have sent an email out to the board and asked that we adjourn this until the next month.
That is correct. As you may recall, you postponed the request for the cell tower at 421 South Williams as they had been tabled at the Planning Commission. They were tabled again at the October meeting 2 days ago. Thus, it makes the most sense probably to hear it after site plan approval if that is received.
Mr. Kroll?
Yes, Mr. Chair, with that, I'll make a motion to adjourn this case till next month.
We have a motion.
Support.
We have a second by Mr. Curtis. Any discussion on the motion? Not seeing any, I will call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right, that is tabled until the November meeting. So moving right along to our first item of new business, case number F191006, public hearing on the appeal of Mario Cabrejo and petitioner owner for the following variance: waive 2 foot of the maximum permitted 4-foot fence site within a front yard setback along South Minerva Avenue to retain a 6-foot site obscuring wood fence within a front yard setback located at 724 South Minerva.
All right, so this property is located just north of Lincoln Avenue. As stated, the petitioner would like to actually retain a 6-foot fence that was constructed along their south property line. Let me go to the site plan. Per the fence ordinance, a front yard cannot have a fence that is over 4 feet in height. They are proposing a 6-foot fence right on the property line between their neighbor to the south. As some of the materials in the packet suggest, the reason for this is the petitioner feels that the dog that resides at the house to the south is potentially dangerous, although it has not been deemed dangerous or potentially dangerous by animal control as of yet. That is sort of what we understand to be the impetus for this request. So I think I can defer to the petitioner further to share any additional information that they'd like to on that point, but do you have further questions?
Any questions for staff at this point? Mr. Klatt? And then Ms. Zukin?
I just want to make sure I understand the vision triangle and the separation required from the edge of the driveway to the fence.
Yes, so I believe there is sufficient clear vision despite this fence. As you can see here, the drive, actually let me go to a different image. I believe the drive, so their drive is located 25 feet from the proposed fence, and then the neighbor to the south, their driveway is located 11 feet. So the clear vision area would be maintained.
Thank you.
You had said they wanted to retain a 6-foot fence. So the fence that's there now is not approved?
Yeah, so I don't believe that they got the appropriate permits for it, and so now coming to the Zoning Board of Appeals to see whether they could retain it, and then if not,
But they're asking to bring it all the way down to the street, though, right?
The sidewalk.
The sidewalk.
The sidewalk,
Yeah,
yes, which-
Okay. Because that's not done yet.
I believe it is, actually. It looks like it is.
We just
It's a
drove
bit
past
short.
it today, so it's
About
not.
10 foot short.
Okay,
Yeah, it's,
That much short.
Yeah.
there we go. Okay, yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions at this point? All right, are the petitioners present?
Yeah,
Please come forward.
good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
My name is Mario Cabrejo. I live in that property for 10 years. The reason why I'm requesting this variance is because for safety reasons, right? We live there. The house on the right side of my property has always been rented. And sometimes they have pets or sometimes not, and we never had any issue. But the problem here is that there's a pit bull, and it's a big pit bull, and it's almost 3/4 of the fence. The fence right now on their side of the property is 40 inches height, and I'm requesting that for safety reason. Number two, the fence is not going to block anybody from driving by. There's 11 and a half, almost 12 feet to the driveway of the neighbor and 25 to my side, and to the street is 21 feet. Now, we're not asking something unique. These are actually the neighbor that is in front of the tenant that has the pit bull. They already have a 6-foot fence all around their house, so it's not going to be any problem having it there. And around Royal Oak, we've seen a lot of places where they have 6-foot fence. So we're asking that for the safety of my son, my family, my friends, or anybody in the house. And as a matter of fact, if we close that, the dog is not going to be able to see the rest of the streets, because that dog is very agitated with people walking. Nobody wants to walk that way anymore. Everybody goes to the other side. So there is some history with that animal. And all I'm asking is just 2 feet more so I can keep my family protected, and he won't be able to try to attack my child. My child, he loves animals. Every time he sees a dog, he goes to pet. But with this dog, my grandma, I work a lot, so I'm almost not home. But my grandma, my mother-in-law, she has been telling us. And as a matter of fact, one time I came back from work early and the dog escaped. And the dog has been two minutes outside before the neighbor even figured out that the dog was not there. So I'm just asking for that reason. I don't have any. Everybody on the street doesn't have any problem. Actually, the owner of the house is here also, and she doesn't mind if I put my 6-foot fence all the way to the street. And all my neighbors around, they are also don't see any issues about having that put. So
Before we get started, and we ask any specific questions, we are down a board member this evening. We can table this till next month, hoping there's a full board. Otherwise, we can move forward, and you'll need 5 out of 8 votes, correct?
The majority of those present, so 5.
5, yeah, so.
4 of 7, excuse me.
There's 8.
So there's 8 of us. 8 of us?
Yeah.
So you are correct. You're right.
So do you want us to proceed, sir?
yes, please.
Okay, absolutely. Mr. Olfak.
When did you put up the fence, and how high was the fence that was there before?
So before it was just the typical iron fence, the mesh, and I did put one like until before the house. And my neighbors, they didn't have any issues, but the last one looks like I got stopped about that. As soon as I saw the dog, I was really afraid, and I didn't know I had to do that before or after. But anyways, I got the permit, and they told me that I had to. They denied me to put the whole 6-foot fence because it's not allowed by the city of Royal Oak unless I go through appeal. So that's what I'm doing.
Has that dog done any attacks or acted angry towards your child at all, or?
Yes, a few times, and that is why I need to do this, because every time my child is playing and the dog is there, the dog acts angry, runs from one place to another place, and we already have history of him running away and trying to by some neighbor from the house, and we have that information here too. So that is why it's, I don't want to go through all the statistics that I put here because we did a lot of research, but pit bulls are considered dangerous dog. They're number one dangerous animal. The 72 total fatalities from all dogs are from pit bulls, and 66% of fatality from 2001 to 2018 are pit bulls. So I don't want to come into surprise that I'm at home and something happened. When I'm at work, something happens and I didn't do this. So that's why I'm here.
The only question I have is it better to actually create your fence so that you actually have a fenced-off area so it can't even get into your yard? Because if it escapes, it doesn't matter how high your fence is, it just goes around the fence. So
Yes, but
I'm
once-
trying to understand how that extra foot is helping you stay safer when it's still wide open if the dog gets out.
So it's open on the side of the street that is not facing my house. If the dog ever goes after somebody, it's not gonna be against trying to be us, because the dog has already behaved like that, and when he tries to be aggressive, it's depending who's he's looking. If I have my fence, he's not gonna look to me, he's not gonna look to anybody on my street. It's gonna be most likely Lincoln or that little side of Minerva, which will not be my problem anymore, but.
Right, but even if you have a 4-foot-high, completely sight-obscured fence there, it's not tall enough to see over the fence, so I'm trying to understand how that extra 2 feet.
Oh, it's gonna prevent from jumping. He already jumped it. And that is why, that is my concern.
Ms. Anderson, yes.
So how is jumping the fence? Because the good dog can obviously jump, if it can jump fences, it can jump the fence
On the
on the
front,
side. So,
yes.
so that makes no sense to me, what you're asking, because what does make sense to me is run that 6-foot fence and line it up to your garage, and then you'd have a safe area back there. And then the other thing is, if you know that this dog has done these things, have chased people, have bitten people, this should have been reported to animal control.
Actually, I went to the city and they told me to contact, I contacted the city. They told me the dog is vaccinated and that's it. So, and they told me to report it to the police.
Did
The
you?
police told me to contact animal control. And then they told me to go to the police, and the police told me, unless he bites somebody, nothing we can do. Next time he's out, call 911. So I can't be playing this chasing around while I'm away and something happening in my house. Nobody from us wants that to happen. So if we have a foot fence, he's never gonna look into my house. He's not gonna be aggressive from anybody in my house.
Well, if it's an aggressive dog, it's gonna, and if it jumps the fence, it's gonna jump the fence on the sidewalk side regardless. And then it'll come right around.
Yeah, but he will chase somebody else. I mean,
Well-
I don't know. I'm trying to protect my.
Well, let me chime in on this, because a friend of mine trains Goldens, and there's, when it comes to dog behaviors, it's a well-known fact that if you take a dog and take away its sight, you know, if you have a little kid playing on the other side of the fence, the dog gets
gonna
agitated. If
concentrate
if the dog never sees the kid, never sees the activity, they don't get agitated. So putting in a sight obscuring fence removes, I mean, do I think it's a cure-all? I don't. But does it,
Something.
it creates at least that level of sight obscuring so that the dog's not always being agitated every time he's walking out to his garage or whatever. Mr. Earl, then Mr. Klatt.
How long has this dog been living next door to you?
Probably 3 months, 2-3 months. I don't know exactly.
How long is the lease?
I don't know. Probably a year or more.
Did you say the owner of the house is here tonight?
Yes.
Maybe we can ask her. Thank you.
Mr. Klatt.
I was gonna say, I understand the sight obscuring, but 4 feet high should obscure the dog's sight anyways. The dog isn't that tall, unless he tries to peer over.
Which they'll do, of course.
He already jumped at almost 3 feet. 1 more feet is, I don't think he will circumvent it. If he already jumped 3 feet, 1 more feet is nothing. And he's a pretty big dog. It's not a
looks like a
small
big guy.
dog.
And I think your neighbor's gate's the wink link here. That's besides the point.
Yeah, I'm just trying to protect my family. Well, the rest is, I don't know.
Okay, any more questions for the petitioner? All right, not seeing any, sir. I'm going to ask you to take a seat so I can open up the public hearing. Is there anybody in the audience who would like to address us on this matter? Yes, ma'am, please.
Hello, my name is Judith Akaka. I'm the owner of the house next door to Mr. Cabrejo. I rented out the house to the tenants in June, so they've been there 4 months now. I've met the dog. I'm not aware of the dog having a violent history. I'm not aware of the dog having bitten any person or other animals. The dog is a pit bull. The dog is very muscular and kind of scary looking. And he does bark, when he's behind the fence, when people walk by. But I was not aware that he had actually jumped over the fence. But I understand Mr. Cabrejo's concern for his family and his 2-year-old son. And kids, sometimes they do like to put, their hands through the fence. Maybe they think they want to pet the dog. And I have no objection to a obscuring fence that's 6 feet tall that extends to the sidewalk if it makes him feel safer, that his family is safer. I just have no objection to it. I've talked to the tenants. They have no objection to it. They understand his concern about their dog, but they assure me that the dog is not a threat, and I'm hoping that that's true. I have not.
I mean, you have seen the pictures of the dog escaping, I'm assuming.
I have not seen that.
Okay. Those exist.
Okay, but I'm not aware that the dog has threatened any individual. And whenever I've been to the house and seen the dog has always behaved properly.
Yes, ma'am.
Is your gate in good working order? Because it seems to me that that's possibly what was pushed open. It looks a little rickety in this photograph that we were given.
The gate is secure. I mean, there's the gate to the driveway that has the two parts that has a securing latch, and as the cyclone fence continues, then there's a separate gate close to the back door, which is also made out of the metal fencing material that also has a secure latch. So the gate is, the fence is old and kind of rusty looking, but it's secure. Yes.
How long is the lease for?
The lease is for 1 year. And they have indicated that they love the neighborhood, they like their neighbors, they would like to stay, and I certainly don't want to upset the neighbors that have already been there. If there are concerns, I'd like to keep everybody happy. I don't see that the fence would be a detriment to the neighborhood. As Mr. Cabrejo said, the house is on Lincoln at the corner of Minerva, and the neighboring house, also on Lincoln, but on the other side of Minerva, directly to its east, also has a fence that's 6 feet tall, that's wood, and it goes around their whole side of their house.
All right. Any other questions? All right. Well, thank you for your comments, ma'am. We certainly appreciate it.
Okay, you're welcome.
Anybody else? Yes, ma'am.
I just want to add something. You all of.
I ask you to introduce yourself for the record.
Sorry, I'm Tatiana Cabrejo. I'm a wife and mother.
Thank you.
So I just want to read some quotes. Unfortunately, our neighbor could not come because she's working. But all of you have our Facebook chat where we talking what happened that day. And our neighbor, she said, her name is Rin Jones. You can read this chat also. She said, small dog is very dog aggressive. Pits are normally sweet, but what one lost it when I was out with my puppy. That video is of him in my yard by my gate after he leapt the fence trying to get to me and my dog. This is what happened. When he got escaped, he trying to chase her and her little puppy, and she could make safely to her house. But nobody knows what could happen if she was far away from her gate. So, I mean, you can read this chat and you can see what really happened that day because we are always talking between neighbors about everything. I just want to add this.
Thank you very much.
Did
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see your hand.
Did she
My
report
apologies.
the incident to the city or
Yes,
to
we
animal
did.
control?
We report to police, and police told they will call to animal control to check if dog have any bite history, but they did not provide to us any information. We tried to find out, but
I know you said you and your husband did. How about the gal who was walking her little dog? And that's the incident where it jumped the fence, correct?
yes, yeah, but it was our neighbor with her puppy across the street. She was walking her dog because my husband got to the house already at the point when she already went inside safely to her house. And my husband recorded like partially the rest of the accident, but was dog was loose on the run.
Did you get your question answered?
Not-
I was thinking Ms. Anderson was asking, did that neighbor who was walking the dog also report to animal control?
No.
Oh,
she
thank
did
you.
not. I'm sorry.
That's what it was.
It's just that nobody knows who to report it.
Right.
Yeah, it's first time for us, so
Yeah.
Well, thank you for your comments.
thank you.
Right. Anybody else? All right, not seeing any hands, I will go ahead and close the public hearing on this matter and bring it back to this side of the table.
Just
Mr. Curtis?
a couple of quick questions. The visual triangle is not a concern from an ordinance perspective because, what, 10 feet is the,
Yes.
and this is 11? Okay, good, that's one question. Second question is, the property on Lincoln that the woman who spoke owns, do they have the right within the ordinance to extend a 6-foot fence to that point? If it was their 6-foot fence, since it's their backyard?
I don't believe they would. That would still be basically a corner lot that has, as is the case here, needs to maintain two front yard setbacks.
But it would, one on Lincoln and a second on Minerva. This is their backyard, all the way to the corner post of this cyclone fence that I'm looking at.
Is that correct, Joseph? 'Cause
If you can bring up actually, Jeff, if you can bring up this, I can see your screen. Yes, thank you. The house that's on Lincoln is currently within the front yard setback of the petitioner's home. So their entire house and the garage are non-conforming
Yeah, that's
because
what
they're
I
within
thought.
the front yard setback. So the ordinance certainly wouldn't allow a 6-foot fence because it's considered essentially a front yard setback.
Because it's the house on Minerva's front yard.
Yes.
Okay.
But that does make a lot of sense to me, Paul.
I was just wondering.
I was wondering that.
Okay, any other questions? You want to throw something out there?
I'll talk if you want to hear me talk.
Mr. Crowley, you ready to make offer a
Yes,
motion?
yes, I'm going to make a motion to approve this.
We have a motion. Do I see a second?
For discussion's sake, I'll support.
Mr. Kroll?
I'm really on the fence on this one for a number of reasons. I didn't even think about the word.
Sorry.
One, the hardship isn't going to last forever, but I do appreciate there is a hardship now. When people come in front of us afraid to live where they live, whatever the circumstances, I think if they lived in an area without the same conditions, I would probably not be as for it, but I think the fence will work in that community, in that neighborhood. Now we get to the point of, I guess, people living in fear. If my girlfriend were here, which represents all four-legged furry animals, she would argue that pit bulls are dangerous in theory, but not dangerous. So there's all kinds of philosophies on that. I don't think it's a safety from a vision concern. And I think I lean on the side of trying to help these people feel safe at home.
Yes, sir.
Well, and you touched on a couple of points that I'm torn with too, because yes, one should never be afraid. But I feel that this is not even a true fix, because if the dog gets out again, because it already has gotten out, if it gets around the fence and all of a sudden looks back and sees their child there, and they're that afraid of it coming after their child, it's not going to stop it. However, if they had a fence that, like Ms. Anderson suggested, was warning off the backyard and their kids in the backyard and it's sight obscuring, the dog's never going to see it, so they'd never have to worry about their kid in the backyard. I think that's the true solution. What's occurring here is, if they happen to live, if the renters happen to be there for a year or even 2 years, we've now put up a permanent solution that's going to be there for what, 20 years, just for a temporary thing. So that's my heartburn with that extension.
Ms. Anderson.
Well, I believe it's a bigger problem than a fence. I think it is now the homeowner has had notice that there's a potentially difficult animal. At least she knows that it gets out. And I don't know if that animal did do something terrible to someone, then that's going to be a real issue. I'm concerned that if it was reported 3 times, they got this shuffle around from the city to animal control to the police to the city. I don't feel that a fence going that way is going to help that much. If that dog gets so agitated it wants to jump a fence, it's going to jump a fence. Those are my concerns. I agree with you that it's a temporary fix for a bigger problem, and I don't even know if it's a fix. It sounds like the homeowner just doesn't want to look at this dog because they've taken a picture of the dog through their window. Those are my concerns.
Well, at this point, I'm ready to support this motion, because if the dog, like was mentioned earlier, is unable to see that family, then he's not going to become naturally irritated. So putting up that 6-foot sight obscuring fence is going to accomplish that immediately. And secondarily, if that one small action leads to that family being that much safer, I think it's worth it, because the last thing, at the end of the day, I mean, if there's an issue with animal control, if there's an issue with the city, that's out of our hands. But if I read the newspaper one day and find out their kid got bit by a dog and we don't want to give them a stinking fence, then I just wouldn't be happy with myself, so I'll easily support this.
And they could take that fence and run it along the garage, and then they'd really be secure. So I'm not seeing
We'll have to agree to
the
disagree.
reason. Yeah.
Yeah,
Who's next?
I can see it not being agitated if it doesn't see the child there, but if somebody's in the front, it's going to get agitated and, and then it gets out and it can run to the side. I'm also worried, even though it doesn't violate the sight restriction, it is coming right up to the sidewalk and it's only a foot away from the sight obscuring requirement. And I'm worried about kids walking down that street and their safety, because there could be a car backing out of that garage. And I know that's not an issue that's in front of us, but
No, but if the city sets a standard on a visibility
the
triangle and it
visibility.
meets it, then it's really not a reason not to approve it.
right, but it does add to the fact that they are asking for a variance anyway.
I think I saw your hand next.
I just think that it's a nuisance. Here the dog is barking and jumping, and this would solve that nuisance for them on what's happening. I don't see a problem with it. I think the dog, if that's what we're here to discuss right here, these particular people on Minerva wanting to do that, I'm okay with that.
Any other discussion?
Yeah, I'd like to chime in. I don't know that this really falls, we don't do trees, we don't do dogs either, right? I mean, this is an animal control issue, and if animal control doesn't want to do their job or they haven't been properly notified that. Furthermore, I appreciate the notion, though, Mr. Chairman, the idea that if I could have done something and I didn't, right? But unintended consequences of what you do. For instance, it might be 11 feet instead of 10, but now it's a side obscuring fence for someone walking up that sidewalk, not knowing there's maybe a nuisance dog behind that, and then when that dog hits that, I'm gonna call it rickety gate, and that sidewalk pedestrian didn't see that dog coming. So I don't know that I've helped, I can't remember, maybe it was Ms. Anderson said, I don't know that it's a fix. It's an attempt at a fix. I don't know that it's a fix. So, there's gotta be a better solution than this. And I think it's probably lies with animal control if there is in fact a dangerous animal.
Okay. Any other comments? Mr. Klatt?
Well, like I said, I personally think a 4-foot-high fence would work here. I think it will obscure the dog's views, but there's no vision issue here, and it'll help give this homeowner peace of mind. So for that reason, I'll support it.
Mr. Kroll?
Yeah, one other thing I'd like to add is I have a pretty good idea how much fencing costs. And this is a big ticket item, and that's moving me a little bit as well, that somebody has that fear of living where they're living and willing to put out that kind of money to solve their problem. Certainly not, they're not solving a neighborhood problem perhaps, but they're solving their problem. So I think it's a pretty expensive fix for them.
All right, without any other comments, I will go ahead and call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
No.
Can I have a show of hands for the nays? Just so we can track those properly. You got it? Mm-hmm. All right. Thank you. Motion passes. You're all set. Okay, so moving right along to item D2 of new business case number F191007, public hearing on the appeal of John Farhat, petitioner and owner for the following variances. A, to waive 2 feet of the maximum permitted 4-foot fence height within a front yard setback along Murdoch Avenue, and B, waive the design requirement prohibiting the use of sharp or pointed material in connection with the construction of a fence or a privacy screen in a residential district to permit construction of a non-site obscuring 6-foot aluminum fence with spear top pickets within a front yard setback located at 2209 Vincetta Boulevard.
Okay, so another fence variance request of a slightly different nature. So you may recall, this property was before you in June of 2017. It is an interesting parcel in that it's an island unto itself. So it was back in June of 2017, the property received several variances related to the construction of a single-family home and garage. And at that time, based on the way that the other properties surrounding it are oriented, we determined, for this triangular shaped lot, where are the front yard setbacks, where are the side yard setbacks. So along Vincetta here is a primary front yard, and along Murdoch here is secondary front yard. And then Lloyd here was determined to be the side yard. So the request is before you to install a 6-foot fence of an open style. I'm going to go down to an example. So 2 variance requests, one to have a 6-foot fence in a front yard along Murdoch, and then secondly, the fence ordinance does not permit this sort of pointed picket style in a residential zone, and so that is the second variance request before you, is to deviate from that standard.
Any questions for staff at this point? All right, not seeing any. Is the petitioner present? Mr. Farhat, how are you, sir? Not too bad, sir.
John Farhat, 2209 Vincetta. I'm here today to ask for 2 variances, one for fence height restrictions and also for style. I'll address them individually. The first one, as far as height goes, if you guys can see the picture in front of you that's up on the screen, Murdoch is considered a front yard setback because houses face Murdoch from the front, Vincent is a front yard setback, and Lloyd is a side yard. The photo that you see, the red line represents where the city is allowing me to put a 6-foot fence without a variance. The 4-foot highlighted section is where maximum 4 foot is allowed. When I was here a few years ago to apply for all the variances to start building the home, I was under the impression, and this was a false assumption, that when I received a variance to build inside the envelope, assuming Murdoch was a side yard setback, which I was approved for building purposes, I assumed that that granted the entire property as a side yard setback. I found out recently when I went to apply for my fence permit that fences are not considered part of the variance for structure. So technically, according to the city, my garage can be 10 feet from the property line, but my fence has to be 25 feet from the property line. So if you think about that for a minute, it almost is impossible. It's like my garage would be outside of my backyard. So what I'm proposing is that the city allows me to put a 6-foot fence up around the entire backyard. If you notice from the photo, none of the fence protrudes into the front yard whatsoever. It actually stops at the back side of the garage. There's no sidewalks that walk up and down. There's no driveway exits, and it's not site obscuring. There's trees going to be on both sides of the fence. I think it would look not only odd to have part 6 and part 4, but for security reasons, I have 4 young children. I'm very exposed to the neighborhood. I just find it to be safer to have a 6-foot fence, and so that's what we're hoping to accomplish. The second part of the variance is related to the style of fence. There's an ordinance that I'd like to read you. It's under barbed wire and sharp material, and it says that it shall be unlawful to construct or maintain any barbed wire or sharp pointed material in connection with the construction of any fence or privacy screening in a residential zoned area. So when I applied for my fence permit, I showed a picture, if you could go to the photo that was up before, which this is the photo I submitted, and I was denied being told that it was a sharp object. So the issue I have with the interpretation is it clearly says that a sharp pointed material or barbed wire. I'm happy to pass this around if all of you would like to see it, touch, and feel this. I don't believe that the top of that fence is sharp or pointed. And what's interesting is that the photo that you're seeing is actually what fence exists through the entire city of downtown Royal Oak along the train tracks, and it's only 3 feet tall. It's within touch of anyone walking on the sidewalk. And if you look at the second half of the ordinance, it says that in non-residential zones, barbed wire or pointed materials may be used, provided that they're at least 7 feet above grade. So this fence that runs through downtown Royal Oak that is highly visible and easily touched by anyone who walks by it is only 3 feet. So that leads me to believe that if I'm trying to put the exact same fence that exists in the city of Royal Oak that's only 3 feet, that's not sharp or pointed because it goes against the very ordinance that they say if it's sharp or pointed it has to be 7 feet. On top of that, I asked the building department if any fences were grandfathered in, if there were sharp pointed objects, and I was told no. So what I did, because I knew that these exist all over the city, I spent the last 3 days driving around the city of Royal Oak and collecting a list of addresses for you, which I'm also happy to pass around. This is a list of 119 residential addresses in the city of Royal Oak that have that fence. Same exact fence that I'm asking for exists in 119 residential properties in the city of Royal Oak. I verified that in the last 3 days. So I believe that the interpretation is incorrect and that this does not violate the ordinance as it's written. So we were hoping not only to extend the 6-footer on the property, but to have this style. We like aesthetically the looks of it better than the top rail being solid. It looks a little bit more see-through and not as heavy. Plus, because we're very exposed, I also think it's just an added layer of security if someone were ever thinking about maybe hopping the fence. It might be a little bit more difficult or you might think twice, so.
Any questions for the petitioner at this point? Yes, ma'am.
Well, if someone hopped the fence, it'd be a little sharp, wouldn't it?
If someone hopped my fence, I think getting over my fence would be the least of their worries.
I'm just saying, it's a little sharp.
Any other questions? All right, well, before I move forward with the public comment, same conditions apply. We're still short a member. Do you want us to move forward with this item?
Yep.
Okay, thank you, sir. Did I see your hand, Mr. Curtis? Oh, I'm sorry. You know, if you'd take a seat. All right, anybody in the audience want to address the zoning board on this issue? All right, not seeing anybody, I will go ahead and close the, oh, I'm sorry. I didn't see you there, my apologies.
Dan Hudson. I'm at 1217 Lloyd, which is basically the intersection of Murdoch and Lloyd, the top of that triangle. I just want to say that I'm in support of this, basically because this is a very heavily discussed property in front yards and backyards. And at the very least, I would like to see a consistent fence around his backyard, which I would consider along Lloyd and Murdoch. So we would be in support of a 6-foot fence all the way around.
Thank you.
All right.
Anybody else? All right, going once, going twice. And now I will close the public hearing and bring it back to this side of the table. Yes, sir.
I'd like to a motion to approve the variances as requested.
We have a motion.
I will second that for
We have a second.
conversation.
Mr. Olfak.
I think there's a very unique hardship with this property. It doesn't really have a backyard per se. It's all front yard, side yard, or whatever yard. He's basically on display. I think actually it was a great sample to bring in. And I agree, it's sharp. It's not sharp. It's a little pointy, but not sharp as in like what I think the ordinance is going for. So I have no problem with what he's asking for.
Mr. Kroll.
I'm also on the fence on this one. Yeah, I really don't have any problem with the 6-foot part of it. I don't love most of the time when I've seen that fence, other than around the train, it's kind of got brick columns or some kind of column it runs into, and it kind of finishes it off. I just find this fence I find it kind of cold, like it's almost isolating this island. But they don't let me be the design police anyway, so.
Well, I actually just don't see a hardship. It is a unique property, I understand that, but I'm not seeing a hardship as we define it. I think that if he was presenting us perhaps with a solid wood fence, you wouldn't be as amenable to possibly, or the neighbors looking at it across the way from Murdoch. I also don't believe that the list of the fences that were presented to us, we haven't seen them. I don't know what they are. They're around the city. Who knows when they were put in? And we're dealing with this particular fence. So that's a lot of fence around there and a lot of big area. I just not seeing that particular hardship. That's all. And I thought it was pretty pokey.
Well, I will not be supporting this motion. While I frankly have zero issue with a 6-foot-high, non-site obscuring fence, the picket pointy top is an issue for me. We have more and more deer and so forth coming through Royal Oak. It's no secret that when those things try and jump those fences, if it has that sort of top, they end up being impaled. I think they're fundamentally dangerous. The fact that we already have them doesn't make them a good idea, and for that reason, I will not be supporting it.
Yeah, I'm sorry, did I jump?
No, go ahead.
I'm right there with what you just said, actually. Yeah, just because it's someplace else doesn't mean it ought to be here. So, and then the argument that it's not pointy, but it'll make somebody think twice about climbing it because it's pointy. I just don't find that a persuasive argument. So I also won't be in support of this variance.
Ms. Zukin?
You just made my argument.
Anybody else? Yes, ma'am.
I don't like the pointy part either. I think just even if it's just straight top, across the top would be fine. That's the part that I don't like. So
Mr. Chair.
won't be supporting.
Yes, sir.
I know we have a motion on the table. It seems almost that it ought to be cut into 2 parts, though.
I'm willing to amend my motion to just approve the 6-foot-high portion of it.
I will accept, and I will accept the friendly amendment, and I will second that.
Mr. Farhat, come up here if you would, sir. So you heard what Mr. Ofac just did in terms of
Correct.
making a motion to approve the 6-foot fence itself, but without that type of points on the top?
Yes.
Is that something that you're amenable to?
I'm okay with separating them.
Okay. And should we make that as a motion forward? Would you want the petitioner to resubmit the product for a city approval, or
It needs to, in order to get a permit anyways.
Okay.
I'm fine with separating them. The 6-foot personally is more important to me than the style. The only reason that we considered the style was because we were told that those are not allowed, and there's nothing that's grandfathered in yet. I counted 119 houses in the city in the last 3 days that have them, so something is being miscommunicated maybe between what the building department is allowing or not allowing. I don't know. I know that's not for you to obviously
Right,
decide
right,
here
and
today.
obviously Ms. Anderson made the point, we don't know when they went in, how long, I mean, we just have no
Absolutely,
idea.
and I can appreciate that. As far as, there was a comment about wood, or, personally, I felt that this was the least sight obscuring fence to use. If you put it between shrubs, it almost disappears, versus we felt like a wood fence was almost kind of make it feel like a prison yard, because you're already on an island. And as far as the comment about, somebody hopping it, that it would be more dangerous, I don't disagree with that comment, but something that's 6 foot off the ground, I don't find to be any form of dangerous for anyone who you would have to be physically on my property to even touch it. And if it does make somebody reconsider hopping it, because I have a super exposed backyard, I don't necessarily look at that as a negative thing. I understand some of the concerns of some of the people on this board, but I have no problem separating it. I just wanted to explain why we chose this style of fence. It wasn't just kind of a random thing.
Okay, so with that said, I'm gonna go ahead and move forward with Mr. Olfac's motion. Did you have anything you wanted to add to that, sir, or Mr. Curtis?
Well, I just wanted to get a clarification on the motion that's on the table.
Absolutely.
We're talking about a variance for the 4-foot ordinance allowing a 6-foot fence.
Right.
Are we also talking about a non-site obscuring 6-foot fence? Because I'm not sure that's in the motion, and that matters to me on whether or not I'm
Yes,
supporting it.
it is in the motion.
Yeah.
The only
Okay.
thing that's being taken out is the pointy part of it.
Okay, so, but it's,
We need to specify that, though, that way.
I would be
we're not-
okay with language that it's basically this exact fence
yeah.
without the pickets that come to the top rail. So the top rail is this solid piece, and these doing
Yeah,
this.
fine.
I have no problem putting specific language, because this is the exact fence we're gonna put, whether the pickets are there or not. So I'm okay with that.
Okay, so that's the motion, right? Thank you.
Yes,
So adding non-site obscuring.
Right.
correct. All right, so is there any additional discussion on this motion? All right, not seeing any, I will go ahead and call for the vote, then all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
No.
Can you raise your hand? Thank you.
All right, motion passes. You're all set, Mr. Farhat.
Well, we have to make it,
There's
I'll
only-
make a motion to
which
deny
motion?
Yeah,
the spiked.
Oh, okay, all right.
I second.
Any discussion on this motion?
I think there's been enough said.
All right. With that being the case, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Wait, I'm confused. This is a motion to
Deny,
deny the
just-
spikes? Oh, okay, I didn't think
Did
that's
you
how
want
it
the
was
spikes?
presented.
So they took them separately and
Yeah, I
added
know they
on to
took
the
them
first one.
separately.
Yeah.
I didn't know the second one was to deny. Okay, as long as
It's-
that's clear.
It's really a beautiful house you're building. I live in the neighborhood, so I ride by it often, and you've done a wonderful job with that lot.
Right. So now he's all set.
Yes, but who didn't?
Was there a nay?
No,
Yes, I will be the, you didn't have a chance to even call the nays, but I will be a nay on that.
All right, sorry about
It's
that.
on the second one.
Yes.
Okay.
So it was all nays.
No, see, it wasn't
wasn't.
presented.
First half was good, second half.
No, because
Wasn't
the
presented.
motion, the motion you made was to deny the picket top.
No, the motion was
Well, the
to
first motion was
separate
to-
them,
to
and they were
separate.
both to grant. So for clarification.
No.
No,
We-
let's make sure we clarify. Thank you.
The 6-foot
We have 6 foot.
fence.
Non-site obscuring fence, correct?
Not- Right.
With the
So we
smooth rail
proved that.
top.
And then we denied the spike top.
You made a motion to deny the spike top,
Right.
which, that's what I
Anthony
seconded.
supported it.
No.
No, I did,
You supported it.
And that passed 7-1
to deny.
to deny the
deny.
spikes.
Who
I'm voting
voted
to
to,
deny.
who voted to
So
leave
it's
it?
It's eight.
Oh, so it's 8-0.
Yeah.
No,
zero.
I still did.
Oh, you said,
You want me to
I'm
know?
like, I'm all right with him using the spikes.
oh, okay.
Okay?
We're good at math.
Unfortunately, you lost 7-1, but
All right.
Joseph's hiding his face because he's embarrassed.
All right, yeah, we made a mess of that. All right, so we're clear, Mr. Farhat? Thank you very much, all right. All right, moving right along. Case number of new business, case D3, case number 191037, public hearing on the appeal of Morosich Architecture petitioner and Woodgal LLC owner for the following variances. Variance A, waive the minimum required 150-foot setback from a residential zone to permit construction of a mixed-use building with ground-level medical office space and 24 upper-level multiple-family dwelling units located at 4710 Register Road.
All right, so this property is located on Rochester Road, I think just south of 14. And the petitioner recently filed a site plan application. They were approved at the July 9th Planning Commission meeting for a density bonus. So actually, let me back up. So the property is zoned mixed use too. The petitioner is proposing ground level medical office and upper level multifamily dwelling units. So both office and the multifamily dwelling are both permitted uses for the mixed use to zone district. The reason that they needed a density bonus is based on the size of the property, which is 51,700 square feet. The area could have 16 dwelling units. The petitioner is proposing 24. The Planning Commission did grant the density bonus. However, there is a stipulation in that ordinance language about the density bonus that there needs to be a 150-foot setback from the nearest residential zone to be eligible for said density bonus. So that's why the application is before you today to request a full waiver for that 150 feet from the nearest residential zone. So, as you can see, this was a former bank branch location. This is the nearest residential zone, which is zoned one family large lot. I'm just gonna scroll down to the site plan so you can get a sense of how the building sits on the property. So I believe there is, actually it's easier to do this. So I believe there is about 45 feet between the edge, 25 feet from the edge of the building to the nearest residential zone. So 25 feet to the property line. Granted, that's, the requirement is about, which zone is, how far away is the nearest residential zone, but just mentioning that detail so you get a sense of how far the building is away from the property line. Do you have questions for me?
Any questions for staff at this point?
Yeah.
So the picture you have up,
Uh-huh.
did you say it's only 25 feet from the building to the green belt? To the
believe so.
east?
Yes.
Wow, it seemed like it was much wider than that.
You mean currently or the
25 feet?
proposed building?
Currently.
Oh, I'm talking about the proposed building.
Okay, because you have that slide up, and that's the one I'm looking at, so
This is
That's
proposed.
proposed.
The dot,
Maybe
the
I can
dotted
have,
line.
maybe actually I can have the architect come up and clarify. I thought that the dashed line was the outline, but
That's a setback line.
Well, Mr. Curtis first.
Well, I have a question. Typically, when I see variances on setbacks, I'm being asked to waive a certain number of
you're
those feet.
waiving 150.
150. So in theory, if I vote to approve this, I'm voting to approve the possibility that they could put a building basically on the lot line.
No.
I don't understand why not, and I'm sorry, maybe I don't know.
Well, it's because they're not asking for a setback variance for where the actual building is. It's basically just sort of the use. So
Would it be because their current site plan from planning would have to be revised? Usually when I'm being asked to waive a setback being asked to waive a certain number of feet. In this
Well,
case.
you're waiving a use
It's,
from a neighborhood, not a setback from a property line.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's the difference. Thank you.
yes.
All right, any other questions? Getting high-tech on us here?
Do you want me to pull up your other presentation?
Oh, well, I think they would help to communicate fully everything that's going on, rather than just the site plan, although the site plan issue is the only issue. So I have boards here that I could.
Sir, before you start, we know you, but if you could introduce yourself, please.
Thank you very much. Hi, my name is John Marusic Architecture,
Thank you,
and I
sir.
am the applicant for this particular ZBA condition.
Floor is yours, sir.
Okay, let me kind of fill in a little bit here of the history, because I think that it helps to put another aspect of this in understanding here. This is, as stated by, the project was presented and approved 4-1 at the planning hearing. And at that time, it was never brought to our attention that we were in violation of a bonus condition. Now, I understand literally it is, but we, at that time, about 2 or 3 weeks later, had certain conditions. We had to add a couple trees, and some counts. It was an administrative situation. We felt we could have no problem. Within about 2 weeks or so after our approval, we submitted, and then we were told that we didn't have a roof plan. So we resubmitted again for a roof plan. We, at the time, also asked that we get an approval. You'll see in the submittal that it's stamped approved. And we did that because we're trying to get the engineering approved. And, you know, engineering is a very lengthy period of time of approval. So we were hoping to get the stamped approval so that we could submit the engineering plans, which were essentially finished. About a week or so after we submitted that last submission of the revised with the roof plan, we were told that the plans were ready for pickup. We went to pick them up, and the gentleman who did the review was on vacation. A week later, I got a phone call indicating that this issue of what was being brought up by Julie was found. So for the most part, you know, we've been dealing very diligently and proactively in trying to address all the issues that the planning department brought to our attention. So the fact that we didn't see this condition, and also with 3 full reviews, wasn't seen by the planning department as well. So I just want to have that as a perspective of where we are today. Okay. Now, as stated, all the other conditions of our approval, height, parking, we have 24 units. We're providing 48 parking spaces. We have a 7,000 square foot medical office. We're providing the adequate number of parking for that. We have a total of 86 parking spaces. And for the most part, what we are trying to do in this site plan, and again, I guess I can point to the plans here, or else I can talk about it up there. I know sometimes when I walk over, I get away from the mic and I want to make sure. But even this right here. But you see here, part of the condition that was made, I'm going to put it right up like this right here, and hopefully I'll just be able to talk about it, okay, is that we are trying to separate the residential accessibility from the medical accessibility. It worked out really well, we felt. We actually also had issues that the fire department brought up, and we worked with them in order to create a solution that they felt also was applicable, meaning we had a access way in the back, which we allowed for a Knox box and a gate to the north so the fire trucks can flow through. And also in the front, we had a U-shaped drive, which allowed fire trucks to also have accessibility so that they weren't on Rochester Road. So they really liked that, and we liked it as well. Now, again, the major issue here for us is that we have a medical office facility. The medical office facility is accessible only off of Rochester Road. And as you well aware, that people come and go, appointments, 15 minutes, half hour, whatever. So there's going to be a lot of traffic. And having the Rochester Road accessibility provided an opportunity for not having to have that impact the adjacent residential. So we felt we were pretty good about that. In addition to that, we had the parking for the residential, full 48 units of parking spaces. Now, what we tried to do is provide them underneath covered so they wouldn't be seen. And we did provide a nominal amount inside the building, and then we had what we call the overflow to the outside. Now, some of the conditions that we felt were positive with the adjacent neighborhood was that we have low impact lighting to the rear. The lighting that would be necessary for the overflow parking would be low in height and shielded. So we felt that, and also what we were planning on doing is having total accessibility to the parking off of Genesee, and have it's not shown on the plan here, but have a no left turn into the adjacent neighborhood. Also, what's not shown on the plan is that we plan on having gated access off of Genesee. The idea here is that we felt was also an amenity value for the residents of the apartment complex is that all of the resident parking is secure and in the rear and covered. Visitor parking for the residential would probably be accessible only in the front. So for the most part, we're going to make a requirement with the apartments is that anyone visiting after 5 o'clock would have to park in the medical. Works out really well. Why? Because the medical people usually leave by 5 o'clock. So we have an accessible access to the apartments off of the residential. So we're making a requirement for the residents that on Monday through Saturday, after 5 o'clock, there's no visitor parking in the rear. Accessible even if they're allowed by a card. All the visitor parking be to the front. So what we're trying to do here is minimize the amount of traffic to the rear. And we also believe that by putting the medical parking to the front, we essentially eliminate the parking congestion that would be a part of that. Now, again, we did this not even knowing this 150-foot setback. I guess I'm saying is that we overlooked the 150-foot setback, and the planning department, after 3 meetings, overlooked the setback. It's something of an obscure condition. Now, I also understand that this is probably one of the first MU3. I'm not quite sure. Is it MU? Just MU2. MU2. Condition to be reviewed, or one of the few. So a lot of this stuff's being tested and understood. So to the degree that we could, if we are required to, as stated earlier, put the building to the front, which we might be able to do, which we don't want to do, by the way, because we feel this is a better design for the community, is we would do it. But the unfortunate nature of that means that all the parking would have to be to the rear, and all the parking would have to be uncovered. So in essence, the conclusion would be that we would have to put 86 parking spaces to the rear of the building. And we would have to have a whole different type of lighting condition, which wouldn't be necessarily a low impact lighting. Now, I think that what we're trying to do here is not go there, because we're trying to provide a solution that we believe is better. And also, I think that this other solution might actually be more impactful on the neighborhood that we're trying not to impact. Also, I think a condition by which I think should be understood too, that this is probably going to be a 16-month construction. So for the most part, if we are allowed to have the building where it's located, the staging for the construction can be in the front. If we move the building to the front, the staging for the construction is going to be to the rear. And I guess we would be impacting on a construction level much more adversely the adjacent neighborhood. So all we're saying here is that we're trying to see that the fact that we may be in, let's say, direct violation of the specifics of the zoning, but we're trying to provide a solution that would actually be a better solution for the neighborhood. Now, I have a video, a drive-around video, which I can present to you, and then turn around and present to the audience, if that's acceptable.
Yeah, I think we're really just talking about a 150-foot setback. I mean, the red line that we're staring at really, I think, explains what we're dealing with more than anything else. I mean, if the board wants to see it, I'm not opposed to it, but.
Could I have the petitioner show me where that building, I see parking spaces and I see the medical part of it. I'm confused as to the one that he set up there. I know, I understand that, but I'm not sure, is all that, you said that there was gonna be some parking in the rear, correct?
Okay, let me go through it.
Okay.
Going this way. Can you see it?
Yes.
Can you see my part? I know it here, okay. This right here is two existing drives.
Right.
Actually, in an original submittal for review, we actually had one drive. And this is where we put the two drives so that the fire accessibility would be more easily administered, and also it'd be less impact out onto the street if we had two accesses and drives. So everyone agreed that that was a very good solution. So the parking for the medical is in the front here.
Okay.
See, here's the medical building here,
Okay,
okay, and the parking would be on the other side. 70 spaces,
right. And what is that
excuse me,
on
35.
the other side? That's the.
This right here.
Yeah, what is that part?
Okay, this is the parking that's within the building. Okay, so this is underneath the building. You want to
So,
See.
So the dark black lines indicate the
where the building
building
is.
that is the residential proponent.
again, is there more drawings that we can put up?
I mean, we have everything that you would have sent.
I sent up all the drawings.
Okay.
Elevations.
Yeah, we got all that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm just saying that, so they're having a,
so all the apartments are above,
right, above here.
Maybe the second.
above the dark black line on the right-hand side and the red line on the left-hand side. Even though ours, does ours have a red line? I didn't see ours.
If you go to the elevation sheet, you
Well, I
can
know, I see that. I'm just trying to get it.
Yeah, see those stairs? Those stairs line up where the stairs
Does
in the
this,
other
I mean,
sheet.
this might show the building footprint best, is that accurate? I mean, it doesn't show the parking behind, but,
See, here's the fence.
It's an aerial view of
Here's
the
this
roof,
right here.
so that would help.
Yeah, I see
Yeah.
that. But I'm just having hard merging that with what we
Think
were
of the black
showing
line.
here.
It's where the black line is. That's where this is, right here.
Okay, so,
Yeah, Leslie, if you look at with the
I
screen
see.
that's up now, then you get a pretty good idea of the building envelope.
okay.
page 7.
So you can see here, here's the medical parking here, and here's the residential parking. The residential parking is accessed off of Genesee. There's overflow parking that's exposed because we couldn't build this is based upon the condition outside of the ZBA condition, this was our setback. So we have majority of the parking underneath the building, and then we have the overflow parking outside here. Does that communicate?
Okay. Yeah, it was hard to tell by that one schematic of how it all, where it was actually positioned.
Yeah, and I
For me, it
made the
was just
mistake
hard.
of the
It's a complex
setback
project.
reading
It's a
that.
mixed-use project, and I understand that it's not a straightforward condition to look at, and that, it took a lot of, design and a lot of review on the part of the planning department to understand it as well. But again, what we're saying here is that this is where, based upon the literal language of the ordinance, we would put the building. So if we were to take all this building, as you see there, and move it up to the front to the 10-foot setback line and fit it within this point here, okay, we would then have all of the 86 parking to the rear uncovered and with pole lighting. We would then have to have our access to that to the rear of the building. And what we're trying to do here is not impact Genesee any more than we have to, and have the majority of the medical access off Rochester and the low impact residential access off of Genesee with no
If you moved it all the way to the front, you would still need the 150-foot.
That's what I wanted to clarify with you, Joseph, because it's the 150 feet from the use of the property, correct?
Real variance at hand. It's not the issue as to whether the building or any portion of the structure is a distance from the rear property line. It's the property itself, as Ms. Sherhart has illustrated. The peculiar aspect, and the petitioner has been very cooperative, the peculiar aspect in the zoning ordinance specifically says that the property must be no closer than 150 feet to the nearest one family, the parcel itself. Now, the petitioner, you may recall, the petitioner was here on a different project 2 months ago in a same zoning district, mixed use 2. There were several other properties in the neighborhood zone mixed use 2. they weren't adjacent, they were not within 150 feet of a single-family home site or zoning district. This particular site is. So it's purely the fact that the property in question is directly abuts a single-family residential zoning district that it is what's in question. Not the building or where the building is placed on the property, but purely the fact that the property is directly abutted against a single-family zoning district. The Planning Commission has the discretion over the placement of the building, its setbacks, the height. What they don't have the authority to do is say, because you're less than 150 feet from an adjacent single-family home site, we can't grant you that density bonus. The board has to give the ability to grant that density bonus. If the petitioner was 151 feet from a nearest one-family residential zoning district, the Planning Commission would have complete and utter discretion to say, we think the project's great, we give you 100% density bonus, you do not need it to go to the Zoning Board of Appeals. But since they're right abutting, they don't meet that provision, the Planning Commission does not have that discretion, you do.
All right, so I saw a handful of hands. I saw Ms. Zupan first, then Mr. Alford.
So again, it doesn't have anything to do with where the building's placed, height, density, parking spaces, none of that. Planning Commission has sole discretion over all of that.
I thought it was the density, though, that's creating the issue.
In terms of the number of parking spaces, the petitioners provided the minimum required. Correct, they don't qualify that with
Because
that
of the
exception.
density.
Correct.
So how many units would they be able to have without seeking a variance of the 150 foot?
16.
16?
So this is 8 additional, which was the 50% density bonus.
That's what's bringing in the request, the necessary variance?
Yes.
Okay.
Whether those units are smaller in size or larger, doesn't matter.
Yes, sir.
So just basically, just to make it clear, if this was denied, then they would only be allowed to use those 16 units. If it was approved, then they can do the 24. Am I understanding that correctly?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Oh, just.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, one quick question. Did you reach out to the neighbors to the east, the one neighbor, I guess, directly behind this? Is there any conversation with that neighbor? Maybe they're here today, I don't know.
Oh, I'm sure they're here, but when we made our presentation, no one came up to speak to it, so we had no feeling that there was any issue. I mean, we would have addressed the issues at that time.
Understand.
But we didn't. We thought it was free and clean, clear, okay? Everyone had notice, so, what can I say?
All right, not seeing any other questions. Before I ask you to take a seat and I open up the public hearing again, we are down one board member. Do you want us to proceed, sir?
Absolutely.
All right, thank you very much. All right, with that being said, I will go ahead and open up the public hearing. Who would like to address us on this matter? Yes, sir?
Good evening. My name is Thomas Horman. Thank you for the opportunity to present comments regarding the requested variance on the subject project. I respectfully request the board deny the requested variance for reasons I will present. By way of introduction, I'm a longtime resident of the city of Royal Oak. I moved to Royal Oak in 1978 when I purchased a home at 323 West Webster. In 1993, I purchased my current residence at 914 Genesee. I respectfully present the following points for the board's consideration. First, I ask the board to carefully examine what circumstances the petitioner claims are unique, extraordinary, or exceptional conditions of the subject property that would allow the board to consider the requested variance, and what exceptional practical difficulties or exceptional undue hardship the petitioner will experience should the board deny the requested variance. As shown on the plot plan, the proposed structure is actually set back farther from Rochester Road than from the residence at 905 Genesee. Most of the proposed structure lies within the 150-foot setback from the residential area. The height of the proposed structure is given as 45 feet. However, the elevation of the property itself is significantly higher than the backyards of the residential properties to the east, perhaps by as much as 4 to 5 feet. Thus, the height of the proposed structure is actually about 49 to 50 feet above the adjoining residential structures. As shown on the plot plan, the footprint of the proposed structure would occupy over 50% of the subject property and would extend over almost the entire north-south dimension of the property. Thus, the overall impact of the proposed structure in both its vertical and horizontal aspects is substantial. It does not harmonize with the character of the residential neighborhood. This speaks to the intent and purpose of the zoning ordinance. Please note that this section of Royal Oak was platted as Royal Oak Farms. We are a neighborhood of small homes, virtually all single-story or story and a half, on large lots. While the proposed structure might be aesthetically appropriate to other areas of the city, please give serious consideration as to whether it is appropriate as the western entrance to the Royal Oak Farms neighborhood. I have a couple of additional concerns which may be outside the purview of the request, but I still want to put them on record. The proposed structure includes 48 parking spaces for 24 residential units, and all of the residents' vehicles will enter and exit this parking area through a single 20-foot wide driveway onto Genesee. This will significantly increase vehicle traffic on Genesee as residents drive west to turn onto Rochester Road or drive east on Genesee to reach 14 Mile Road or Campbell Road, at which point they will be encountering vehicles entering from the 186 new residential units of Midtown Point Apartments on Campbell Road. Has the impact of this additional traffic been fully evaluated? Please note also that several young families with preschool children now live on Genesee and that area residents are using the sidewalks more frequently. Will the increased traffic from the proposed project provide additional hazards to the pedestrians in our neighborhood? Also, in the last 5 years, there have been at least 2 breaks in the water main that runs along the north side of Genesee, near the existing driveway into the subject property from Genesee. Will the stress of demolition and construction activities and the ongoing demands of the new 24 residential units create more breaks in the future? Finally, will exterior lighting on the proposed structure and its parking areas create a visually distracting bright spot for existing residents of Genesee and for our neighbors across Rochester Road and Clawson?
Sir, I'm going to need you to try and wrap up, please.
In summary, the 150-foot setback requirement was established for good reasons. The board is authorized to grant a variance from this requirement, but only under certain circumstances. The memorandum did not provide any information to support the approval of the requested variance. In consideration of the points presented above, I respectfully request the board deny the requested variance.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
And who would like to go next?
I don't want this to be on my 3 minutes because Mr. Marouche says that no one appeared at the planning commission meeting.
Can I ask you to introduce yourself,
My
ma'am?
name is Carolyn Martz. I live at 918 East 14 Mile Road.
Thank you.
Mr. Marouche claims that no one appeared at the planning commission to dispute this. Well, we didn't receive it. I don't know if it changes from the planning commission to the ZBA, but here's my ZBA notice. I did not get one for the planning commission. Okay. I got a letter from a resident that wasn't able to make it tonight. Do I give that to
Yeah,
you?
just hand it to
or-
Mr. Olfax. We'll read it and pass it around.
I also have a copy of my statement. You want that as well?
Sure.
Okay, I'd like my 3 minutes, please. I asked that. The other portion, okay. So I'm opposed to this proposed project at 4710 Rochester Road as a whole. I think the architectural renderings show a utilitarian building that may be fine for downtown, but is out of place on the north end of Royal Oak. I disagree with the findings, the Planning Commission memo in paragraph 4, subsections A, B, and C. The memo reads, the proposed density will not adversely impact adjacent properties or nearby residential neighborhoods. My response is, the proposed density will adversely impact the adjacent properties and the neighborhood, and that there are 1- and 2-story homes, and the proposed project is incongruent at 3 stories and will impede the open-air space currently enjoyed viewing sunsets and weather conditions. This is the north end of Royal Oak, not downtown. It's called Royal Oak Farms. Each property enjoys between a 1/4 acre to a 1/2 acre parcel of open space, trees, birds, and wildlife. This project puts 24 units on a 1.1 acre parcel with balconies overlooking our backyards and will infringe on our property while enjoying our property. B, the added density is necessary to support redevelopment of an area which currently contains uses that have an adverse impact on adjacent properties. I believe this is political obfuscation meant to sound intelligent that this development will be good for the surrounding area. I disagree. C, the proposed development is designed to facilitate the objectives and strategies of the master plan. Excuse me. Again, I disagree. The Planning Commission has granted a density bonus to this project from the 16 units allowed to 24 units, which brings us here tonight to cut the 150-foot setback from residential property to 25-foot, a ridiculous accommodation for this oversized monolith. Now, you clarified something today, but I believe that was changed sometime this year, probably specifically for this project. I believe this is an egregious interpretation of the master plan and that this proposed development is incongruous with the historical and current aesthetic of the neighborhood. In closing, I'd like to remind you that you're our neighbors and ask that you hear our concerns and not ignore us because your decision is already made. Our homes are our biggest investment, and I feel this proposed project will adversely affect our property values. I don't know where you live, but I'm asking you to envision yourself living here. Envision this monolith being built in your backyard. You can stop this by not allowing this overreaching variance. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. And who would like to go next?
Hi, everybody. My name's Elizabeth Carpenter. My address is 1213 Genesee. Been a resident there, moved in 2000, and we do enjoy our neighborhood. And it is a very unique neighborhood in Royal Oak. I'm not quite as prepared as some of my neighbors, and I appreciate, but yeah, our neighbors, yes, I know. But I absolutely agree with them that we would ask you to deny this density bonus. The 3rd story, going from 16 units to 24 units would just change the neighborhood. It doesn't conform to where we're at. We are a family neighborhood. Taking it all the way to the street just increases traffic. As 914 neighbor also mentioned, we just went through Midtown Point, where there's another 800 residents moving in the Campbell Midtown Point. We've already seen increased traffic flow, and they just now started to rent that. Let's also take into consideration Main Street was taken down to 2 lanes. So we also have the increased traffic on Rochester Road because of that. It takes me an extra 40 minutes to get home just to get bottlenecked in the Rochester, because you can't get off 75 anymore, so everyone's coming down that way and avoiding Main Street. So I want to keep the integrity of our neighborhood. I'd ask that you deny this variance. We love our neighborhood. Our grandchildren are now there. I raised my child there, and now my grandchildren are playing on the street. And I know change is inevitable. I'm good with that. We watch Royal Oak grow. But in that particular pocket, it just doesn't fit.
You know, Charles Hemp, same address, 1213 Genesee. My question is on a project of this size, how come more residents aren't notified in the beginning of this whole process? For instance, the residents along Genesee Street, other than, 300 feet from the project, I believe?
We're here because our neighbors.
Finish all your, I'm taking notes, we'll be answering questions.
Okay.
Okay.
So, yeah, any other comments,
Yeah,
please?
and like, along with my wife and the other residents, the traffic. The traffic's a big thing. You know, we've already seen increased traffic, and they're gonna put an entrance right on Genesee for the parking lot. You know, so we've got cars coming in from Campbell, and then they're gonna leave there and go right past our house. I mean, he just talked about a no left turn sign at that entrance on Genesee. That's not gonna work. That's not gonna deter anybody from going down our street. It's just, the traffic's gonna be a mess, and the size of the building is just, it's just unfit for that neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you both.
Thank you very much.
All right. And who would like to go next? Anybody else?
Hello, my name's Katina Leslie. I live at 902 East 14 Mile Road. My house is adjacent to the alleyway. So my concern is with all the traffic. Right now I get all the trash from all the businesses. So we have no fence, no nothing to protect my yard, my grandchildren, my pets, nothing. So what are we gonna do to keep the traffic from going basically in my yard? Because I do have traffic go through my yard to get onto 14 Mile Road. So I'm trying to figure out if, I mean, I don't know. I just find it odd to have something that big, you know, next to my house where, like they said, we are all just a family neighborhood. So we're trying to figure out why would you build something that big next to all of our homes? And plus have something, you know, because the alleyway will have all the emergency vehicles going through basically my yard because there's no wall there to protect anybody in my house. So I want to know what's going to happen there if you approve it. I'm just trying to figure out for that because I don't want anybody driving through my yard. I don't want anybody, you know, coming to my yard. I don't want the trash from the apartments coming in my yard because it does from all the businesses. So I just want to know what else is going to happen because I find it, I don't know. I just don't find it right to have something that big in our neighborhood, is what I'm saying.
So are you immediately like in the backyard of the Royal Bar or?
Yes,
where-
I am.
Okay, all right. I was trying to picture in my head where you're at, so.
I am right there, so I
Okay.
get everything. My fence was taken away by the city because it kept falling down because of when the city would come by and plow the snow. They would knock my fence down. I'd have it repaired. It'd get knocked down again the next year, repaired. Finally, I just got tired of it. The city took it. I have someone come and clean my yard every week because I was in an accident, so I can't do it anymore. So now I have their trash. I'm going to have the trash from the doctor's office, from the apartments, you know, and people driving through. So we're trying to figure out, you know, I mean, I don't know, I'm not really for it to have it there. So, I mean, that's all I can say.
Well, thank you very much.
All right.
Anybody else? Yes, ma'am.
Sharon Weaver at 922 Genesee, right next to Tom and Linda. It was already brought up once on, and hopefully you'll be able to answer that question on how something so big could not have been addressed with the people in the neighborhood. I know people that have been in the neighborhood for a very long time that at last second, what, where are you going? I just made it here, obviously I was late, I apologize for that. That I wasn't informed. My dad was one of the first people on the street. He built the house in 1958. My brother, sister, and I, we grew up there. My son and I are now living there. He didn't know about it either, so we didn't even so much as get a postcard. So that's something that hugely I would like to, you know, have an answer to. also, there's a lot of people that, I mean, I've seen the neighborhood change and people come and go. There's older people and then the newer people come in with the kids and whatnot, and seen a lot of change. But the main thing that I see is it's changed, but it's changed in a family format, and it hasn't changed in a business format. And I understand that Royal Oak is booming right now, and not that I'm against change in general, but just like a few other people have already said, that corner is not the place for it. And what the other lady, sorry, I don't remember your name, what she's had to go through is just absolutely horrendous. And just for the businesses there, and you know, when you add more to that, and there's a lot more traffic that's been coming through there. People cut through from the I-75 and so forth. And I watched the neighborhood, and it has turned over. It's changed to a lot of children, and I don't have little children anymore, but I fear for the people that do. And as far as the left turn, I don't understand why something like that important.
Ma'am, direct your comments this way,
I'm
please.
sorry. That important. If you're worried about a neighborhood, that wouldn't be on a plan. To me, that's something that should have been on a plan, that left turn lane. However, I do not think that just putting up a left turn or no left turn sign is going to keep people from doing that. You're not going to monitor people coming and going from apartment or townhomes or what have you. I'm sorry, I wasn't briefed on all this before I got here. From turning left out of there, and that is going to be a lot more traffic. Like I said, I'm just kind of coming into this new. My son couldn't be here, but he was very, very concerned about the same thing. And I know this is just about the variance, and from what I'm understanding is whatever's been already passed. But when you're talking about one level.
You try and wrap up, please.
Okay, when you're talking about one level, I'm sorry, I just found out about this.
That's okay.
When you're talking about one level, it is one thing. Even though I'm down the street on the other side of the street, you put somebody up 3 stories, yeah, you're in everybody else's backyard now. And that's not what all the people that moved into that area, there's a lot of people that just recently moved into this area, were looking for and what they've paid for in order to come into this. It's just, not because I live there, it's in the wrong spot.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. Anybody else?
I don't have much to say. Oh, I'm Linda Renovara. I live at 914. And I don't have a lot to say because Tom covered it pretty well. But I agree with Sharon. Just because it says no left turn does not mean that people are going to turn right and then try to get on Rochester. Because it's very difficult to get, if you want to make a left turn on Rochester, it's hard. It's just a fact of the matter. We live on Genesee, we go down around the block to avoid turning left on Rochester. It's difficult. And the fact that that driveway, 20-foot driveway, is going to be the in and the out for 48 vehicles. You don't want to be there at 8 in the morning or 6 o'clock at night because it's going to be crazy. People are going to be lined up to get in and out. And I think it's going to be a bad situation for the neighborhood. And I agree with the other person, it's not going to help our values. Also, I had a little bit of an issue with putting a medical office there at the front. There are medical offices empty in different parts of the area. You see them for lease, medical will build to suit. Why do you have to put it right there? If that medical building wasn't there, maybe it would change the whole project. Maybe the project could go through with the proper setbacks. I don't know why the mixed use, and I'm sure it has to do with money, but I don't understand what the bonuses are and all of that. But does that have to be a mixed use? Could it be something else? Could it be something that would fit in the neighborhood better? These are all questions as we've been walking around in the neighborhood. We've been asking people, what do you think? Would something else be better? And we're not opposed to something on that corner. I mean, for as long as I remember, it's been a bank, but we're not opposed to that. But could it be something better? Something that would fit in with the neighborhood, something that would look nicer, something that would be easier for all of us to live with. And that's it. But thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, anybody else? Not seeing anybody, I will go ahead and close the public hearing and bring it back to this side of the table. Do you want to start with just by addressing what the process is for notification of these types of projects?
Yes, so, it's not that you guys missed a postcard that should have come. So, this property is zone mixed use 2, and because both of the uses are permitted uses, the project did have to go to planning commission for site plan review, so that's kind of just making sure that, you know, many of the, you know, components of the site are kind of working together, and the planning commission does that. But if it's not a special land use that's required, then no public hearing is required. So that's why all of you guys are finding out about this at the variance stage. In terms of public notification, we do notify folks within 300 feet of the property. That's kind of the rule of thumb set by the state of Michigan and their Zoning Enabling Act. And most communities, I would say, follow that mark. You know, I guess I would also just say, and, you know, in an extent, maybe it's more difficult because you have to seek it out, but all of our meeting agendas are posted online. And if you want to sign up to create an account on our website, I would be happy to walk you through that. And you can actually sign up and get an email notification every time we publish a new agenda. So, you know, it's hard because I think we want to do as much as we can to keep people in the know, but it's hard to feel like, you know, we're getting everyone. But in terms of public notification, that's sort of how that has gone.
And I think another issue, you know, and it's just not just tonight, and again, I'm sort of getting away from what we're talking about, but, you know, until I-75 is fixed, you know, I live by Normandy and Greenfield. You wouldn't think that I would be impacted, but I'm telling you, turning onto Greenfield just doesn't happen anymore. I mean, I've actually have to go out of the way to find a light. And so when we're talking about, you mentioned the road diets and so forth, until we get to the point where I-75 is done, we really understand what's going to happen when those literally tens of thousands of cars get out of our city and stay on I-75. It's just going to be pure hell. It is what it is, so. And bringing it back to this side of the table, I don't know if I had any other questions that I wanted to deal with, but Mr. Clatton.
Oh, I just have a clarification item for Ms. Shearhart.
Oh,
So
okay.
I know there's questions about height and bulk and density, but just to be clear, so the height that they're proposing, requesting is allowable, correct? The 3-story height that's allowable in this district?
I believe so. Maybe Joseph could verify. I didn't take a look at the specifics of the plan beyond what the variance today was, as it was already approved by the planning commission.
Yes, the planning commission does have discretion over the height.
Okay. So that being said, if they were to propose a 16-unit development at that height and at that same distance from the rear property line, we wouldn't be here.
The only thing different, other than the number of units, that's absolutely correct.
Okay. So views into the rear yard, things of that nature still would be the same.
We're on this side of the table, sir. No, we're on this side of the table now. All right, Mr. Obeck and Ms. Zukin.
I'll make a motion to deny the variance as requested.
I'll
We have a
support.
motion. We have support. Mr. Obeck?
In going through what we usually typically look at as hardships and whatnot, the property, I don't think there was enough evidence presented of hardships being required to seek this variance. For example, they're able to use this property as permitted. The variance would do substantial justice to the applicant as well as the property owners, as we've heard, and I would agree with the property owners, this would change that whole area. So I don't see that as something they've shown that it works with the property owners, it works against them, in my opinion. The plight of landowner is due to the unique circumstances of the property. That one I can sort of see because this lot is located right next to a single family. I don't know how many M2 lots are located within over 150 spaces away from single family. So that one I can sort of see. But then the fourth one, the alleged hardship, has not been created by anyone personally having property. They created this hardship themselves. So out of the 4, 3 of them I see they brought it on themselves. So Because of that, I can't vote in favor of the variance.
And who was, you were second on that?
My question was the same as Mr. Klatt's. It's going to be it could be just as high. It could be the same distance from there, but the density is an issue. And for us to grant a variance, we've got to look at the requirements, the A through D, and I don't think any of them have been supported, and that's why I'm voting against it.
Mr. Kroll?
I'm going to be joining Ms. Zukin and Mr. Olfak on this. A couple of things. I think density in the downtown, in the business district is one thing. Density at 14 and Rochester Road is another. I just find it too much. You know, so many of these things are coming down to financially, it's not feasible to do it without 24 versus 16, and I say don't do it then. It's just way too much building for that lot, and hopefully we're not gonna just see every piece of property that we have imaginable in the entire city of Royal Oak come in front of us with this density issue. And it seems to be something we're seeing more and more of, and I don't like this at all.
Could you speak to the type of uses that would be allowable in the MU2 district?
Yes.
We heard some talk about a little unhappiness with it being a medical office.
Mm-hmm. Well, office is a permitted use. I mean, Joseph probably has more of these off the top of his head.
Full retail in MU?
Yeah, retail, I mean, it could
7-Eleven?
it could be purely residential, it could be, I mean, I think there are select commercial uses that are permitted. I don't think it's as intense as a general business, but I believe that, you know, medical office, professional office.
Restaurant?
I'd have to look on restaurant.
Well,
Do you know?
well, my concern is that what I'm getting at is that, you know, I personally like medical office because you pretty much know that you're dealing with Monday through Friday from 8 to 5. And you start talking about 7-Elevens and Burger Kings and restaurants with drive-throughs till 2 o'clock in the morning. I like the fact that if I'm going to be, you know, next to a business on Rochester Road, they go home at 5. To me, that's a very large plus. To follow up on my comments, I will not be supporting the motion to deny. I think a medical use on Rochester, given the fact, like I said, they're a 40-hour-a-week type business. And then, you know, the residents that live there, it's a changing of the neighborhood, but this conception that the people that move into this building will be any different from the people that that already live in the neighborhood. I've never bought that notion. They care about the properties as much as you care about your properties. And the reality is, I mean, this was fully vetted by the planning commission. They looked at this on every aspect and did pass it. And more importantly, I think you hit a very cogent point in the sense that there's a lot of different ways to redesign this thing where it's gonna be there anyways.
I would disagree with that.
Well,
Go ahead and finish.
that's
bud.
certainly, you know, your prerogative, but, so I will not be supporting the motion to deny. Mr. Kroll?
Yes, in answer to that, Mr. Chair, I think if you have 16 units, you're not looking at a 45-foot-high building. So, and there is a major difference in somebody sitting on their balcony 45 feet in the air and looking into my backyard. I'm sorry, there's a major difference in density. And again, why does there have to be a medical piece of this? Why can't it just be an apartment, or why can't it just be retail? Why can't it just be something? Why do we, I mean, everything coming in front of us has to be this, and this, and I'm telling you, 45 feet in the air, if I live in that backyard, I'm not happy.
Any other comments? Ms. Anderson?
Well, yes, it's true, planning passed it, but they sent it to us, so we're actually the ones that are passing it. And I believe that for this type of a structure, they do need that 150 feet. Otherwise, it just doesn't work in that right there on that piece of land, that close to single family.
Any other comments? Mr. Klatt?
I will not be in support either. I know planning did pass it to us, but I do believe that they felt the density was appropriate for the area. I think they're properly parked. I think the height can be what they are proposing. I also look at the unit count here too. I see there's 2 bedrooms, 1 bedrooms. Looks like they have a total of 16 2-beds with 8 1-bedroom units. So again, they meet their parking counts, and the density may not be there because there are a mix of 2 and 1-bedroom units. So I will not be in support.
Yes, ma'am.
But you brought up a great point, is that if they, instead of having so many units from 16 to 24, if they made 16 units that were just bigger, it would still be the same size building. It just wouldn't, we wouldn't be sitting here today.
Right. The density is the issue, and I
Yeah.
think that's what most of the neighborhood was objecting to.
But the building would still be the
Yeah,
same
it
size.
can
is
still
what
be
I'm
the
saying.
same size. It's
Yeah.
just the amount of units they can put in there. And the issue of it being a medical building, that's not before us either, because that's allowable. The only thing that's not allowable is the density without a variance, and that's what we're voting on.
Mr. Rovak.
As I brought up in my points, they haven't shown the hardships required to meet this variance for approval, in my opinion. I haven't heard in any of this discussion where any of you have brought up the hardships that they're trying to face.
All right, any other comments? Mr. Curtis?
I've heard this discussion about density and where it's appropriate, where it's inappropriate, kind of isn't before us because it was approved by planning already. Except, in order to get this project done, they need this variance. And I'm hearing from this board, pretty split opinion on whether it's a good project or not. Strong case that there's not a hardship that they didn't create. I mean, and so I think I will be in support of the motion on the table.
All right, I think everybody has chimed in, so I will go ahead and call for the vote. All those in favor of the motion to deny signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? No?
No.
All right, the motion fails. I mean, the motion passes.
The motion
and-
passes.
The motion, you know, yeah, the motion passes to deny. Here. 4? We are on number 4. I'm gonna just give the room 30 seconds to clear out.
Sure.
5 to 3, I believe.
I think 6 to 2.
6-2, I think.
Oh, did you
No, it's
vote?
3. It's 5 to 3.
5 to 3.
Folks, if you guys could take that discussion out into the house so we can move forward with the meeting, that'd be awesome. Thank you so much. All right, moving right along to item of new business D4, public hearing on the appeal of Christopher Adams, petitioner and owner for the following variances. A, alter and expand a non-conforming use. B, waive 288.6 square feet of the maximum allowable 621.4 square feet. Accessory structure, ground floor area, waive 4.6 of the maximum allowable lot coverage of 10% for an accessory structure. And finally, D, waive 2.6%, 161.1 square feet of the maximum allowable coverage of 30% to permit construction of a new 910 square foot accessory structure garage located at 212 North Edgewood.
The board may recall that in August, there was a motion to deny a variety of variances. Some of those variances related to the house, to the dwelling itself, and the expansion of it, in the relocation of the front door and the porch. There was a variance request related to the driveway width, and there were variance requests related to a proposed 15-foot tall detached garage in also its related lot coverage and the total lot coverage. The board did deliberate with the petitioner at last month's meeting, and the petitioner is back with a new variance request. Staff was generous with allowing the petitioner to come back at a new variance request. There are no variance requests today in front of you related to the expansion or modification to the house. It does not require any variance requests. The petitioner is proposing to take down the existing detached garage and construct a new detached garage that's 13 feet in height, so lower and a different style than what was previously presented to you. The garage that the petitioner is proposing would be 910 square feet in area. Again, the previous one was 1,050. So the petitioner is seeking a variance. As we know, we allow for a maximum accessory structure to cover no more than 800 square feet in area, and the petitioner is proposing a 910 square foot accessory building or garage. So they need a variance related to the size. The ordinance allows for the garage to also be no more than 10% of the lot area. The petitioner is seeking a waiver of 4.6% from the maximum allowable 10% related to the garage. And that equates to 288 square feet, or 289 square feet. All the structures on the site can cover no more than 30% of the lot. The proposed garage would result in all of the structures being or covering 32.6% of the lot. So they're seeking a variance of 2.6%, which is 161 square feet. We can do the comparison if you'd like to the previous proposal, but I think that's a decent summary of what the petitioner is proposing. He did provide us with a revised survey, and he noted an example or provided drawings of an example of a garage that he does have in mind to construct.
Any questions for Mr. Murphy at this point?
If it was an 800 square foot garage, would he be in compliance?
No, we wouldn't. The maximum allowable is, I think it's 647 square feet. I can check.
I have 621.4 in front of me.
Sorry, okay.
And why is it only allowable 621.4 because of coverage issue?
Yes, the ordinance states that no matter how large your property is, the garage can't be more than 800 square feet. So if you had a really large piece of property, a 10,000 square foot lot, ordinance says it can be no more than 10% of the lot area, and in no instance bigger than 800 square feet in area. The petitioner's 10% is less than 800 square feet.
There it is.
It's that number that you had provided, because that's their lot size.
So we can move that decimal point over 1 point, and we know how big the property is.
Yeah.
And correct me if I'm wrong, if I read this existing site plan, the current garage is 836 square feet because it's 24.37 by 19.85. Is that correct?
Current garage is, yes, 600, it's 24, you're correct, based on the survey, it's 24.3 by 19.85.
Okay. That is a 630, my horrible eyesight. That is a 636, okay.
Any other questions? All right, floor is yours, sir.
Thank you for hearing me on this again. As he stated, I did have the previous request.
And just for the record, name and address.
Oh, I'm sorry, yes.
No worries.
Chris Adams, owner and requester, 212 North Edgeworth Avenue here in Royal Oak. I had been here a couple times before. I do thank you guys for having me back again. The request before was kind of a relayout of the property. This request is purely for the size of the garage. It does end up with multiple variances due to the fact that, like was stated, the lot size and the maximum size and the lot coverage all come into effect because it is a small lot coverage. So I have actually detailed something that I would like to read here. So in relation to the actual hardships, the house is permitted as a two-family home. This allows for two families to live there. The size and regulation limits the rest of the single-family dwellings in the area to approximately a 600 square foot garage, give or take. 600 square foot per family for a single-family home. This, when you extrapolate to a two-family home, leads to approximately a 1,200 square foot garage. I personally think that that's even excessive, but there are two families living in the home, and so that is a unique thing about this. The request of the 910 square foot, which I've determined to be the minimum amount of space to actually fit the 2 cars and 2 families worth of stuff into the garage. As the garage is intended, 600 square foot for a single family, I think that I can fit the 2 family worth in the 910 square foot. This has been discussed with the neighbors, and the neighbors are in agreement with this, and they approve of this new proposal. As you can see at the very end of the long list of drawings and stuff there is the approval sign sheet from the neighbors that I had discussed it with all of them, and they've all agreed that they like this. A lesser relaxation would not actually allow sufficient space for the garage to be used by 2 families. The current garage exists, and you cannot fit 2 cars in the current garage. Side by side, it's not wide enough. And we both have pickup trucks, and as it is a 2-family home, there is always potential for 2 pickup trucks to need to be into that garage, as well as the fact that it being a 2-family home, storage space inside of the home is limited, and so then the storage does also need to be in the garage. So it is a unique situation to the property, and the 910 square foot is the optimal size to both allow just enough space and to have as little variance request as possible. Again, it is the only 2-family home in the area, so it has specific needs. This was set up before the purchase of the home, so it's not something that was brought on by me. It was not something that's brought on by anything that has been done. It existed this way before, and it didn't work before. And so that's why I'm trying to fix it. These variance requests are all related to only the size of the garage and having a garage sized appropriately for a 2-family dwelling. As a side note, there is a garage that is four houses down that is actually larger in square footage than what is being proposed, and was granted a variance many years ago. It was probably 15 to 18 years ago. I was talking to the neighbor, but there is already a garage that is larger than the proposed garage that is 4 houses down. So yeah, in conclusion, it's just the size of the garage for the purpose of meeting the needs, the specific needs of the 2-family dwelling.
Any questions at this point for the petitioner? Yes, sir.
Oh, just one quick question. I did see your long list of approvals, but I did notice that the neighbor to the south, the person that's most affected, was not on that list.
Yes, he is not on that list because he was on vacation when I was having the list signed. I have spoken to him, and he is in full approval of this project. He actually really likes the idea of getting all of the vehicles in there. Speaking with him in a legal or something that doesn't necessarily have anything to do with this particular discussion, but when I put the driveway in, he does have a clean out that he's worried about, that I drive past on a daily basis. In the interest of, being nice to the neighbors and keeping that safe, I have talked with him and talked with my contractors, and they are actually going to dig up a small section of it and replace it for him and encase it in concrete so that in no way can it ever be harmed by me driving up and down the driveway near there. Or if anybody, any of the tenants or anybody in the future is driving near there, they can't actually harm it. So I'm taking it upon myself to actually make sure that his property cannot be damaged. And he's in agreement with that.
I think I had
Thank you.
Mr. Opek and then Mr. Kroll.
So I just want to verify, so this is officially a 2-family home residential.
Yes.
Okay,
Sorry.
that's recognized by the city.
Yes.
Okay.
Mr. Kroll.
I just wanted to tag on to Mr. Klass. When I was looking at the property again, the neighbor to the south recognized me from, they were here complaining about him last time, and they stopped me and told me that they totally approve of it, and he's been with it. So that was the neighbor directly to the south that stopped me.
Yes, ma'am.
Is your current, the whole house, is it, on public record, it's showing 1,414 square feet. So you're saying, is that Is that correct?
Yes, it's 1,400, and
public
if it says 14,
So-
then yes, it's
so
something like that.
When you say it's two-family, it may have two different families in it, but it's not really big enough to say that it has two families that each have 1,400 square feet each. So you've got to split that in half somehow, and usually there's not gonna be enough bedrooms or something. I mean, I guess what you're presenting to me and to us is that you have these two large families staying there, and they have all this stuff, and it's not gonna fit any place unless I get this big garage.
Kind of, yes. So the upstairs is a single-bedroom unit. It has its own kitchen, its own bathroom, it has a dining room, and it has a living room. There is one closet in the bedroom, very small closet. It's a standard 1915 Royal Oak 2-foot by 2-foot closet. There is one closet just off the living room. It's about a 2.5-foot by 3-foot closet, 5-foot closet, 2.5 by 5. And so that's the only storage area in the upstairs.
Right, and my point is it's probably not gonna be rented to 3 people. So they're not gonna have that many people's worth of stuff. So traditionally, a one-bedroom is rented to one person.
Right. The current tenant, it's him and his child. So there is two people living in there. Yes, I understand. Generally, a single unit is a single person, or one couple. Even so, one closet worth of storage space is not even necessarily enough.
Do you have a basement?
I currently, no, actually. It's in construction. The basement is being finished or being redone because there was some water damage issues. But there is a basement, but the basement is not finished. And
Well, it's good for storage. Especially if you put it on a rack and had things up above.
Right, of some
That's what I'm
items.
getting at, is that I'm getting that, I think there's other maybe areas to store things if you didn't get your whole garage?
There are some areas to store things, yes, in the basement, but things like, I also need areas to store like the lawnmower, the snow blower, all of the equipment to actually take care of the house. Because I am the landlord, I live there, so I have to be able to take care of the house at the same time as live in it. So there are additional items like that that are being stored there.
And then one more thing I want to
Yes.
mention is that you said that you had a small lot. Your lot isn't that small. It's actually larger than many lots in Royal Oak. It's 50 feet by 123 or 24. So it's not.
It's not
considered-
extremely small. It is 200 square foot above the lot thing. I believe the 6,000 square foot is the point where it's deemed a large lot. Some of the lots around me are actually larger than mine, which is why I was saying it's not small, but it is slightly smaller than some of the lots around me.
Well, I guess my point was that that's not really a hardship in your instance at all, because it's not a small lot.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay.
Understand, thank you.
Any other questions? All right, let me just ask you to step aside real quick. I don't think we're gonna have any public comment. Do either of you two gentlemen want to address us on this matter? You sure?
We don't have anybody else.
I will close the public hearing and come right back up if you would. So do you have like in your?
He did want to continue since we're down.
Oh,
a
I'm
member.
sorry, forget.
Yeah.
So again, we're down a board member. Do you want us to continue with this?
Yes, please.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying that. I mean, so I'm assuming you have some sort of agreement in your lease that you do share the garage?
Yes.
Okay. Your closet size and your basement size does not concern me because that's not what we're talking about here.
Correct.
All right.
Maybe
Mr. Platt?
one more quick question. Is the size dictated by the building type you're proposing? I thought you mentioned that last time you were here when you came up after the meeting. Is it based on the building type? You mentioned it's almost like kit that you're purchasing here. So is the length of the garage dictated by this construction type?
The length of the choices that I have for building size is dictated by the kits. The kits come in either 26 by 35. That is the closest kit that is available to the that actually fits my needs. The next one is essentially the same size as what I have now. I believe it's like 6 inches larger or something. The intended purpose of actually taking down the garage that I have, it is not in the best shape. It would need to be repaired. It is somewhat in need of repair. The floor is cracking, so the floor needs to be repaired. The driveway is not pitched correctly. You can see in the plans, the driveway is planning on being repaired. And so as a whole, it was planned to update the property and make it useful for a actual two-family home as it is licensed. Everything else that is planned on being done meets codes or meets the regulations, but the garage size is the only thing that doesn't. And I'm just trying to get a large enough garage so that the vehicles and the stuff can be inside and away from the neighbors, because it does cause some problems with the neighbors that, like, there's enough cars on the street and all sorts of stuff. And so the neighbors, they were here, I don't know if you were here a couple times ago, but they were complaining that all my stuff is on the street, and they are correct. I do have a lot of stuff on the street. There's two families, and there's only right now one parking spot. There's only one parking spot in the garage. So if it's possible to get, two parking spots in the garage, we can get the vehicles out of the way, off of the street, so that it can be plowed when when it snows, that kind of thing. It is just, in general, overall better for the neighborhood for me to be able to get everything out of the way.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the petitioner? If not, is anybody ready to take action at this point?
Well, I don't know if I'm ready to take action because I'm waffling a little bit here. I can understand how the current garage may not be large enough, but I'm willing to maybe go up to 800 square feet to allow it to be, but I have a hard time going the size that he's wanting, just because he's got a normal sized lot. My personal lot is a lot smaller than his. But I understand him having a two-family there, but that's essentially a one-family house. I'd say his neighbor to the south of him actually has a house that's large enough that looks like a two-family. So I'm having a hard time with some of the stuff he's requesting.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
I would like to make a motion to approve this.
We have a motion by Mr. Kroll.
The support.
We have a second by Mr. Curtis. Mr. Kroll?
I'm always impressed when the room's filled with people yelling and screaming, and then the person comes back and all the people have agreed. So I know he's living in some conditions that are unusual, and we'd like to see probably less of it. But on the other hand, I think that he's worked out a situation with the neighbors in there that everybody seems to be happy. And I mean, the last time I think he had 18 or 10 variances requests, and he's down to 4. So he has certainly heard us and compromised it to the point that I think he thinks he's at the minimum requirement. So I'm okay with that.
Mr. Curtis?
Yeah, I mean, it's not his fault that the city approved a two-family home, and he bought a two-family home. And I'm sure he did it, as people do, with the idea of renting out part of that. And there are now two families in there. And it'd be great if it could fit into an 800-square-foot garage, but we would still be asking for variances. So that 110 square feet doesn't bother me. As you said, I'm glad he worked it out with the neighbors. And I really, really am glad you're going to encase his clean-out, because he was very adamant about that being damaged. So I'm in support of the approval of these variances.
Any other comments? Ms. Anderson?
Oh, and talking about the large garage down the street, one of the reasons all those years ago the variance was changed because of the large garages like that. It's a little inappropriate for certain lots. I have not heard a hardship. I've heard a lot of wants. I just have not heard a hardship. The hardship is that you collect toys, that you like the extra things and you put them in the garage. Well, we all have that, but we make it work. So I'm just not seeing the hardship in the fact that, oh, just because there's a renter upstairs, they have more stuff. Well, then you have to make some guidelines for your renters or yourself. I don't know, but I will not be supporting it.
Anybody else? Mr. Klatt?
All excellent points. I guess I will be in support of this. I wasn't at the last meeting, but it seems like you took good strides to make a bad situation right. So I'll be in support.
Yes, sir.
I'm still not sure which way, because the thought that just jumped in my head is knowing how people like to look at things and knowing it's not necessary precedence. I've got, for example, a person who lives next to me who rents out both of them, and so it's technically a two-family, and they're wanting to do a garage, and I can see them saying, hey, they just did a larger garage because it's two renters in this single-family home that happens to be there, and use the same logic. So the question is are we going to be opening up a can of worms by allowing this argument on a house that's on a one-family residential lot, sized one-family, even though there's two in there? Are we going to be opening up a can of worms by...
I don't think this would be near the, I'm sorry.
I'm not saying we are or not. I'm just understanding all our actions have consequences, so I'm just trying to rationalize that as I'm going through.
Mr. Kroll.
Yeah, I think we've approved larger garages than this.
On larger lots than this.
Well, I don't remember the exact conditions, but.
Well, I'll be in support of this motion. I think Mr. Curtis made a very good point. I mean, do I think it was a great idea that whenever the city decided to approve this being a duplex, was it a good idea? Probably not, but it is now. And the reality is, for those people who live on streets who are falling over their neighbors' cars because they didn't know where else to put them, they frankly, I think there's a real hardship in the fact that the city did indeed allow this to be a duplex. I think there's a definite benefit to the neighborhood when the cars are in his garage and not on the street. I know we all like our streets to be more open if possible, so I think he's doing himself a service, obviously, but I also think he's doing the neighborhood a service as well.
I'm not denying the fact that he can have a garage. I'm just denying the fact that he gets an extra 110 feet. So.
Any other comments?
And I appreciate that. If he had if he had one that wasn't an extra 110 feet, he'd still be asking for variances based on coverage.
And I would approve those variances.
Yeah.
That's not, it's just the size of
the
the
110 square feet,
110
yeah.
square feet.
I got you.
I will go ahead and call for the vote then. All those in favor of the motion to approve signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
No.
No.
Did you get the nose?
Yep.
Oh, okay. Oh, you're trying. Will you quit throwing your voice? Motion passes.
Good
Thank
luck
you, sir.
to you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
All right. So that moves us right along to our final item of business.
I think it's these guys.
I'm hoping it's those two guys. Case number 191039, public hearing on the appeal of In Season Properties LLC petitioner and owner for the following variances. A, waive the screening enclosure for refuse and recyclable containers, and B, waive the hard surfacing requirement for a driveway loading area and refuse receptacle storage area to permit expansion of a restaurant at 500 East 4th Street. Mr. Murphy.
We have a lot of repeat customers. This petitioner is back. In January, the petitioner went to the Planning Commission and received site plan and special land use approval in order to expand into the adjacent building next door. Shortly thereafter, they came in front of the board here because they were required in this particular zoning district to provide the required amount of off-street parking on their property, which they were unable to do. And you granted them a variance in order to expand into the space next door and waive the parking requirement. The petitioner had approached the staff and indicated that they were seeking to modify their site plan in order not to have to construct the masonry enclosure for the
Trash.
dumpster for the trash out back, and a small portion on their private property, which is in disrepair and needs to be resurfaced in either asphalt or concrete. They did need to return back to the Planning Commission. They did so, and the Planning Commission in September modified their site plan and special land use approval to not require those, but obviously they modified the site plan in order to allow that to be the case, not have to enclose it, and Planning Commission does not have the discretion to grant that waiver. Because it's a special land use, the Planning Commission had to approve the modification first in order to allow them to come in front of you to seek the variance today. So the best illustration that I can provide to you is the photograph on the screen and directly below the microphone, and I'll zoom in on it a little bit. There is a 16-foot alley adjacent to the petitioner's property. It's generally outlined in yellow. And you'll see that the unenclosed dumpster is located on the petitioner's property. It does need a variance in order to continue to be located out in the open and not be enclosed. And they have a small portion adjacent to the building in the public alley that's needs to be hard surfaced, and they're asking for a waiver of that. So those two items are in front of you today.
Can you speak to where the city would, if this was being approved or being offered to the city in a way that would not require a variance, where would it be enclosed and where would the city typically want to see this on the property?
You can refer to the site plan in terms of where it was originally located. That enclosure, typically 3 sides, masonry screening wall, wooden gates on the front that open up to allow for a refuse truck to be able to access it. Alternatively, like you see downtown here where buildings go lot line to lot line, oftentimes there's an overhead door that rolls up along the rear of the building. The dumpster or the grease bin or recycling bin goes inside the building, and that roll door comes down. So it's completely enclosed within the building. That's an alternate option as well. But that, in this particular case, would require that the petitioner modify their building or construct an addition to accomplish that. And they simply are requesting not to have to do any of those options, but to have it as is.
Ms. Zukin?
Now, this is all being brought about because they're putting the door in between the two buildings, correct? And the dumpster and the alley were that way before.
Yes, but we look at it in terms of compliance with current zoning ordinance requirements and bringing deficiencies into compliance.
Because of they're attaching the.
Because they went through site plan approval in order to occupy the space, tenant space next door as well.
So,
Mr. Kroll?
so what's changed, or should we let them tell us? I mean, I find this very confusing that it was put out this way, and then we agreed, the planning commission decided to change it, and now in front of us to change it.
Because it's a restaurant is a special land use in that particular zoning district, the planning commission has to modify the site plan and grant them special land use approval before it can come to you for any variance request. So it was the same process with regard to them coming the first time in front of you to seek a variance.
I mean, but
for
we
the
both
minimum
agreed to what they were gonna do, right?
Which included enclosing.
Right.
Yes, correct, correct. And the petitioner can speak to why they are opting not to do that at this point in time.
Mr. Curtis?
You mentioned that there's a small part of their private property that would be required to be hard surface asphalt / concrete. Is that to the left of that yellow line you had up?
We'll refer to the survey, and the petitioner can certainly point that out as well, but we'll look at the survey and site plan that they provided. If I can bring it up on the screen.
Oh, I'm sure they can point it out.
No, I'll get it.
You got it?
Bear with me.
Yeah, well, I mean, why don't you ask your question while he's taking that up?
Yeah, just one, Mr. Murphy, I guess I didn't fully hear when you mentioned what type of enclosure is allowed. So I think the applicant did mention that looks like they're gonna maybe eliminate the dumpster and go with smaller cans. Can it be a lesser style enclosure, like a PVC or something along those lines, or chain link with slats, something to help conceal it? Maybe not a masonry enclosure with gates, but something smaller or lesser.
The ordinance does require a decorative masonry in some capacity, whether that's actual block, brick, or it's stamped sections of paneling. On the screen in front of you, you'll see a survey which highlights the public alley, and then the shaded portions, the darker portions, that's the outline here in black is the property line. This is the portion of the alley which truncates shortly down a ways, and that's the portion behind their building here and here that you see that would need to be resurfaced. So a rather modest area. It's the only portion of the property that's not covered by the building itself.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
All right. Not seeing any other questions? Please come forward.
put this easel? I've been thinking about that for a half an hour.
If you need more time, we'll let you.
I'm sure everyone was. Oh, this looks like a good spot, okay. But I won't have a microphone. I don't really need a microphone, I can talk very loud.
Well, do what you can to stay on microphone so the people at home can hear you, also.
Right there, too.
Oh, there is.
Yeah.
Very fancy.
All right.
Great.
Good evening, Mr. Chairperson, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Michael Levitt, Leavitt. I represent the In-Season Cafe this evening. I'm going to split my time up today. I believe we have 10 minutes, so I'm going to take 5 minutes roughly and then give the other 5 minutes or defer to the owner of In-Season Cafe, Nick Raftis, who is to my left this evening. How did we get here? Mr. Raftis bought the In-Season Cafe in 1996. It's a vegan-style restaurant, and I'm sure most of you are probably familiar with the facility or maybe eaten there. When he bought the property, it was used as a restaurant, and he took it over. And back in 2017, he found out through the city that it wasn't zoned properly. It fell through the cracks. There was no paperwork. As a result, Mr. Raftis filed a special use land permit to continue the restaurant operations. Two conditions were he filed his site plan originally in January of 2018. Two conditions of the site plan that he would like waived today would encompass the alley that has to be paved as well as the trash receptacle. Now, the alley has stayed that way the whole time. Mr. Raftis is not changing his restaurant whatsoever except making a hole in the wall connecting the adjacent buildings. He's not expanding the restaurant. He's not adding tables. He is just going to use the adjacent building for some storage.
Wait. I've been using the adjacent building since 2002, and it's been used since 1996 for adjacent storage. I met with Joe in 2007 and Marty Sterling and gave them the plans. Everybody knew. This thing's been inspected by the county 30 times. It's been qualified by the MLCC to be off-site storage. We're looking for an occupancy permit, a piece of paper to justify this building's been used for 21 years in the same capacity. There's no expansion. And on the front of those drawings, the site plan drawings, it says, this is not an expansion. I've been using that building the same way. The only thing is, they want me to put a handicap bathroom in, ADA compliant, which I'm happy to do, and they want me to put a hole in the wall. Now, we get to talk about an alley, okay? Let me tell you about this thing, because I'm kind of hot about it.
Is this part of your 5 minutes or your 5 minutes?
I might take all of the 10 minutes.
I'll defer.
Change there.
You know the in-season. Okay. Whatever I do here is going to affect this whole area. And what I'm talking about is rats. The thing we never talk about in this community. We have a rat infestation. And I'm fighting rats every day, okay? And I'm a health food restaurant. That doesn't make any sense to me. I need a permit for 502 that's been used the same way for 21 years combined with this business. Somehow or another, I get involved in this alley because it's been abandoned by the city. What you see that's ugly, that's all city property. When we talk about paving this alley, we talk about right there, when you have the picture up, that approach is in the wrong location. That approach makes everybody drive on my property to get to the public access property. Does that make any sense? No. The telephone pole down here, 3 feet into the intersection, you cannot have a big dump truck go down here. You do not have access through here very much at all. The mayor calls this the alley that goes nowhere. There's a drain at the end of the alley, over here, off this whole plan, which if you don't include it, you cannot do the storm drainage properly. Also, there's 3 mature trees here that all have to be removed, which is gonna open up these $600,000 homes to looking right in the back of this commercial property. And I don't think that's right. This was the site plan one. Okay, this is what you approved. You know, they give you two paragraphs of text. Get with an engineer, get with this guy, get with that guy. That's not a plan to me, because I want to show you what this plan is. This is your property. This is a public property, a private property. They want me to pave this approach and pave all this property to here and put a dumpster enclosure here. Nobody ever asked me if I needed a dumpster, and I don't. I got all these paperwork from the city, I keep reading it. Why do I want a dumpster? I don't have enough trash to justify a dumpster. 20% of the trash I get, I recycle right now. Half of the trash I get is cardboard. If you go in back of all these businesses here, like Town Tavern, you go in back of what used to be, what's the name of that? The Jolly Pumpkin? There's 8 totes full of cardboard. Town Tavern, 7 totes full of cardboard. 55% of my stuff is cardboard. My actual waste is only 20% of 100% of the waste. So that's why I don't need a dumpster. And that's my plan. I'm getting rid of the dumpster. So why? It doesn't seal. You can put a $15,000 closure around it. It doesn't keep the rats out. According to the specifications and the standards, I can put an 8 cubic foot dumpster there, this tall, fill it with trash for a week, and it stinks, and the rats are having a party in there, and that's what I want to do? No, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to use totes, just like you got outside here. I'm going to put totes on the concrete pad, and I have my recycled totes, and I have no intention of paving the city property. Because I'm neurotic about rats, I'm going to make a beautiful enclosure for my totes. I don't like all these totes out in the alley. You know, that's not my style. I'm going to have a double seal. The totes seal like an inch, and then I'm going to enclose it with a constructed, something maybe made out of even fiberglass, more like a dock. Somebody's trying a dock, heavy, impenetrable. And that way, I can have a beautiful community. You know, my neighborhood is going to be rat-free, and that's what we're asking you to do.
Well, I'd like to add on to that. Mr. Raftis already has a concrete platform. He doesn't need the dumpster because of the amount of trash that he has every week. This is perfect. In terms of repaving that public alley or repaving a portion of it new, that's not his property. That's the city's property. So it makes really no sense for him to go through this expense, especially when you consider the fact that he's been there for 23 years and has never had this issue come up.
38 years.
38.
Yeah.
So we're asking that this board respectfully waive the 2 variances, or waive the requests and grant our variances for not having to pave a public alley, that's the city's property, as well as perhaps allowing Mr. Raftis and the In-Season Cafe to utilize these totes, which, by the way, seal a lot better than a dumpster. And he does not need the size of a dumpster based on the fact that he's a vegan restaurant that has a lot less waste than most restaurants in the city. Thank you.
All right, any questions for the petitioners?
I don't know what a tote is.
The tote is the green thing you got parked outside the door. The big trash can.
It would be like a residential trash can.
Okay,
It's
it's a regular
right
trash
outside
can.
the door. You got them on every floor of this building, there's a tote.
Recycle bins out there.
Yeah, just like those bins, yeah. The 96-gallon tote.
And then can I keep going?
Of course.
In the pictures here, there is a dumpster.
I have a dumpster now because I didn't even know, okay? I got educated This thing's been a whole education for me, because I've spent a year and a half trying to get a permit for the building. I spent $30,000, I'm not even close to getting a permit yet. So, yeah, this whole public access paving kind of got tacked on to me trying to get a permit, for occupancy permit for 502 East 4th Street. That has nothing to do with 502 East 4th Street. There is no expansion going on.
But that's your dumpster there right now, that's,
Yeah, it's there right now, because I don't have permission to do anything else.
okay. And so, I mean, you're saying we have a rat problem, and are the rats because of that dumpster is what you're saying?
The Royal Oak, let me tell you my opinion. City of Royal Oak has an infestation of rats because we have an over-reliance on dumpsters, okay? Dumpsters do not seal, that dumpster's not sealed, rat can crawl. The masonry wall is a perfect little vehicle for the rat to crawl up and jump in the dumpster and get back down. That's what that does. That doesn't seal the dumpster. The dumpster still stinks, and it's a rat playground. Doesn't matter if it has a $15,000 enclosure around it.
Who do I see next? Mr. Kroll.
I have a question for Joe. So is this dumpster suggested, or is this dumpster a rule?
He has to have the waste hauled away, so he has to have some type of container.
Right, but it sounds like they're going to have some kinds of containers. So there isn't really the physical need for that dumpster sitting out there, as long as the trash is handled.
Any size container that's outside, whether it be the larger size actual dumpster such as this, or several different bins or containers on wheels, whether they be for one type of waste versus another, anything outside needs to be enclosed.
But you're talking about enclosing it.
With a
I'm gonna have a double seal. Now, if you walk down any of these alleys over here, Washington, Main Street, you're gonna see these totes all over the place, and open dumpsters.
This is the plan here.
Yeah,
The totes will be inside.
Yeah, the totes are inside here, and they're gonna be double sealed, so I got the seal of the totes, and then I'm gonna have a seal of the other container on top of that, so that if somebody, doesn't do their job properly, I got the double, what do you say, bonus benefit of having an extra ceiling.
Jeff brought pictures.
May I ask?
Of course, yeah.
2 questions. One is for Joseph, Mr. Murphy. The presenter said that the cities require him to pave city property. I understood from you before the presenter that the city is requiring to pave private property.
The variance request is the pavement of the private property.
Okay, so it's not in fact public alleyway that's being asked to be paved, yeah.
Zoning ordinance provision applies to private property.
Good. And then, of course, I was just curious about your still it's private refuse, to be hauled away, the totes are still picked up by a private company, right? That's
Yeah, just like anything else.
just like a dumpster would be for a restaurant or whatever, yeah.
The same company can pick it up.
Yeah, good, thanks.
Oh, by the way.
But I would ask, though, because you seem to react to this answer I gave, I would be interested in what you're saying.
Well, what they want is all paving, utilities, and work within public rights of way shall be in accordance with the specifications and standards of the city engineer, including but not limited to paving of the public alley adjacent to each property and reconstruction of the public alley's driveway approach to Knoll Street.
And that's a letter from the city.
That's their
That's a memo.
that's their memorandum for the requirements.
Correct. The variance request, zoning ordinance provisions apply to private property, so they're seeking a variance today from the provision to pave their private portion of their private piece of property. The requirement to pave the public alley and do the improvements in the public alley was a contingency of the planning commission. The zoning board of appeals cannot waive that. You can waive variances associated with private property. That's the variance today.
That's why there's 2 different stories. Good, thank you.
So
I'm confused.
where's the planning commission at right now on this issue?
It was approved contingent upon obtaining the 2 variances that you see in front of you tonight.
clarify, the enclosure issue is just masonry versus what they want to do.
They asked to not have to have an enclosure at all. If they elect to have some other type of enclosure, that's perfectly acceptable, but the request in front of you today is to not have an enclosure.
See, this is interesting to me because your rat problem issue is no secret. And it seems to me that you may have invented, no pun intended, Mr. Kroll, a better mousetrap. But at the same time, what the city requires is pretty clear in terms of a masonry structure, 3 sides with doors that shut and so forth, and I agree with you.
But you have to.
Let me finish my thought, sir. Again, you've been barking at us all night, please listen to us. So I agree with the notion that what you're proposing with a roof on top of it as well as the enclosures and the totes inside seems to me like it'd be a lot more secure than what the city's requiring. But what the city requires is what the city requires, so it's sort of like, the ultimate catch-22.
But okay, can I answer? Please. You have a requirement of 2 cubic feet, which is almost 200 gallons of trash before you meet the requirements to have a dumpster. And I don't have it.
Do you have and then I see a lot of head shaking, this is we're marching on a unique road.
Wanted a dumpster, or had to have a dumpster.
Well, does somebody want to take a bite at the apple, Mr. Klatt?
Oh, no, so I mean, it's a good point. You know your trash needs better than anyone else. You've been in business for a long time, so it seems like that's the suitable container for the trash that you generate.
I don't mind paving the alley, but you cannot pave the alley without stripping the entire alley and sculpting it. You have to sculpt this alley in many directions, from the homeowners, from the building, and slope it towards the drain at each side into the knolls and the other drain. So this entire alley, if you want to pave it properly, has to be totally stripped and sculpted.
Ms. Robinson?
I'm spinning here now, all different things. So the thing right before us right now about the trash in the dumpster, the variance is whether or not we allow him to say we don't have an enclosure. Is that, am I right? So but we're not here to say you cannot have it's okay not to have a masonry enclosure, but it's okay to replace it with that as long as you have that. That's not what we're here for. So.
Correct. The petitioner's original letter request was to not do it at all.
Right,
They
so we
presented you
can't-
with
okay,
something
so, okay,
different
no, I
that's
can't.
illustrated in some totes, but not others. But the request today is to not have to do it. If they elect to do, if you grant the variance and they elect to do some
That's fine,
modification thereof.
but he doesn't have to do anything.
That's correct, if you grant the
Okay.
variance.
Can we make a motion including
One
that?
more.
Hold on, she's
I
got
wasn't
the
done.
floor.
I'm sorry?
I heard him say that the alley had been vacated. Who owns that land that we call the public alley?
It is still an open public alley.
It's still okay, thank you. So it still belongs to Royal Oak and okay, thank you.
Okay, I think
Okay,
I
I'm
saw
done
Mr.
now.
Olfak, then Mr. Kroll.
And maybe we shouldn't be, but are we allowed to do a motion along lines of if they elect to not have a dumpster, then they would not need a dumpster enclosure for it? But if they did have a dumpster, then they would have to have a dumpster enclosure.
Whether you want to call something a dumpster or a tote or
Okay,
a rubbish
so
bin
you-
or any type of outdoor container.
I got you.
Whether it's, and now we add, since we do recycling, we have recycling containers, we have grease bins, we have traditional
I got you.
garbage, we have other recyclable items, food items that get hauled away for the whole host of bins that you can throw things in. Any of those bins, whatever size they are, have to be in an enclosure, which they're asking not to have to do.
No, they're asking not to have to do a masonry one.
That's correct.
That's correct.
For the dumpster.
Where am I next? Mr. Kroll and Ms. Robinson. again.
So do we have the ability then to put that in a motion that they have to have, not necessarily masonry, but they have to have some cover? Can we do that or not?
They're not asking for a variance from the design aspect of it. They're asking not to do it at all.
But yet they're here presenting that they are going to do it.
There was a board.
It's an optional thing I want to do because I'm neurotic about rats. Each one of us in these buildings, we all hire the same guys for our rat problem, like an ecological company that deals with rats. So this is a constant bombardment, a constant attack, a constant infiltration of rats. And, you know, even the Dalai Lama said you can kill the infestation.
Ms. Robinson, did you still have a comment?
Yeah, just because we're kind of thinking about that is whatever we agree to do here, it runs with the land, because, right, it runs with the piece of property. No?
Not
I mean-
commercial.
If you
I-
grant the variance request and the petitioner no longer owns the restaurant and changes to a different restaurant, the variance is still valid.
That's my concern.
But they would have to have a totally different business operation plan.
A restaurant to a restaurant, it runs
No.
with it. So if he closes tomorrow and it's a Chinese food restaurant, then
Been there
You know,
for
other
38
people-
years.
The other people may not be into recycling, but you know, we're into this planetary kind of happy thing, and so we are really devoted to recycling.
no, and when you say that, I mean, I completely believe you, and I look at what you're proposing, and in a lot of ways it makes sense to me, but the reality is, the city has standards that they have developed, and, you know, we really don't know that product, I don't know if it's a tried and true tested product,
The
and,
tote?
well, I'm saying to
The
handle
tote-
trash,
you-
again, you're arguing with me, sir.
I'm just saying, I'm not arguing with you, I'm just saying all you gotta do is drive
Well, let me
down
know when I can
Washington or Main Street and see all the toads in the valley.
Well, somebody want to offer a motion?
Oh, I was just
Or
gonna,
comment?
one quick comment, and maybe this is for Joseph. If we waive the hard surface requirement for their private property, right? If the city ever decided to actually do something to the alley, like actually pave it, it seems that should be considered at the same time. Because of the way maybe water runoff would go and things like that. It seems like that whole area, it would be better, in other words, when someone or somebody does have to tackle the alleyway, it would seem like it would be a city issue, that at that point, maybe maybe they would require the individual businesses to do theirs too, just because of the way the water would run. Because I know sometimes driveways go towards the house, and all of a sudden you got all that water there. So I'm not opposed to waiving number B at this time, just because I can see maybe the logistics of how it would work out in the future.
Would you like to offer that as a motion?
Well, have we had public comment yet?
Yeah, we had
Oh, yeah, let me open the public hearing and close the public hearing. And again, we're down a board member, so do you want us to move forward with the vote this evening?
Yes, please.
Thank you.
Well, then, I guess I will move to approve case number 191039 on both A and B.
I support that.
Any follow-up to your motion?
I just feel that it seems to be working now. It's been working for 38 years, I guess. And I honestly think that some of the dumpsters are, and when you have a dumpster like that, unless you put a lock on it, sometimes other people come by and throw their trash in. So I'm not sure if that happens with you. But I do feel that in the future, if there's some plan to do something with the alley, perhaps then is when the city has to knock on your door and say, you know, we need you to do this, or a special assessment, I'm not sure, but.
Oh, I'm all about that. And Joe, as a matter of fact, you go tell Tim tomorrow.
Sir, she was speaking.
We're on this side, right?
So.
I thought she was done, my bad, I'm sorry.
Oh, that's fine. So, I mean, those are that's my thoughts on this. And they're not super concrete, but I do feel that going forward, this is the best way to approach it right now.
Mr. Kroll?
Yeah, I'm in agreement with that. Number one, I think that I'm seeing a lot more of the totes versus the dumpsters, so I'm not sure that we have totally are on top of that whole thing at the moment and really looked at all the new products available and things. And I don't know, asking businesses to pave alleyways. I think that's kind of a burden on the businesses that doesn't need to be there.
Any other comments? Well, go ahead, I'm sorry.
I'm going to say no, I'm voting no, because I think that we're saying that it's okay to not have a dumpster here at all, when he's got a restaurant and he could sell that restaurant tomorrow, and we know he's not going to, but it could happen. I mean, I don't see why you can't build into the building, even like you're talking about other dumpsters that are inside where the roll-up door, I think we had a picture of that someplace here, that could be used for his totes.
It's not saying that you don't have to have a dumpster, it just says you don't have to have the masonry enclosure.
You want to clarify that, Mr. Murphy?
It would allow the petitioner to have whatever refuse containers outside in the open, shall we say, as you see in the photograph, as has been for a very long period of time.
And but with this, there would be nothing that would compel him, not to say that you're not going to do what you're saying, but there's nothing that would compel that.
Correct, because he would have an approved site plan and variances from this board, which would not require him to have them enclosed.
Right.
Whether it's a single container or multiple containers.
Can we make a friendly amendment to that? To say that it's got whatever refuge he has to be enclosed?
Just doesn't have to
And
be
just leave it
masonry
there?
or, yeah.
The variance request is to waive the enclosure requirement.
If I may,
We're on this side of the table.
Yeah, so to that point, Mr. Kroll, I would suggest that the only way to do that is to deny that request and see if there's a request that gets modified that would include a guarantee of enclosure of some form.
And I'm in agreement. I mean, I have no issue waiving B, but I think it's a slippery slope when this body just starts saying that we can waive enclosures and so forth, and where that could possibly take us down the road. Mr. Ophek?
I think the confusing part is our variance is just to waive the screening enclosure, has no mention of what that material is, but then down in the planning said it had to be masonry. And I think that's the problem.
That's the standard under the ordinance.
Right. We don't have a problem with them doing something else like metal where rats can't chew through metal, but understandable of why not to spend money on the masonry. So, but it sounds like ours isn't dealing with the material, it's just dealing with the fact of it's either enclosed or it's not enclosed. If I'm understanding that's how we're doing, Joseph.
Let's read the petitioner's letter that was provided to the board.
Because this just seems round and round confusing.
In the letter, it asks not to have to do the enclosure based on the cost of the enclosure. So they're seeking the variance not to have the enclosure.
Well, let's move this forward. So we have a motion on the table to waive both variances with second. Let me call for the vote on that, see where the chips fall, and then we will proceed accordingly. So all those in favor of the motion to waive both variances signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Nay.
Nay.
You want the nays?
So the motion carries.
We have,
You need 5.
yeah, we're down to 8 today.
It's 4 and 4, is that right?
So it fails, correct?
Correct.
All right.
So
That
then what
brings us Mizukin.
A procedural question. I know in the past, we've granted variances and added additional requirements. And so can't we say we're granting the variance to waive the masonry enclosure as long as he does an enclosure he does an enclosure, period?
And I agree with that, but it seems like in here, when I was talking about the planning was requiring that it be masonry. So I don't know if we have the authority to waive the materiality on that enclosure.
We must, or they wouldn't be here.
it seems to me if we have the authority to waive the enclosure,
Right.
we have the authority to, that's my opinion on whether or not we have the authority.
Well, just to make things simple, let's first, I think it failed because of confusion and stuff. Let me just make a motion to waive variance B, the hard surfacing requirement for the driveway loading area and refuse storage area.
We have a motion?
Yeah, I'll support that.
Second by Mr. Kroll. Do you want to follow up on any comments, or?
No, I think we've discussed enough on that one.
That being said, I will not see anybody else. I'll call for the vote on that. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Okay, so that's done. You want to jump back over to Mr. Opak?
No, not yet. I'm still trying to figure out if I can figure out which way this.
Can you
is on that.
can you add in waive the masonry screening enclosure?
Well, I would say it would have to be an enclosure that's not, I don't know how to say it, not rat edible, like wood, rats can eat wood.
Rodent-proof or something?
The reason why masonry is out there is because rats can't really readily eat concrete and masonry, same with metal.
Let me jump in here and just offer something. Mr. Murphy, what are your thoughts on this? If we table item 5A for a month and allow them to come back to your department with some suggestions of materials and how they're actually going to apply it, and then the professionals in your department can determine if you feel it's acceptable as opposed to us guessing?
Well, the variance request in front of you tonight is not it's not material related, it's to waive.
To waive it, right?
Waive the requirement.
See, that's just it. I'm just not comfortable doing that unless we, I think.
And the petitioner
It fundamentally-
provided an illustration which had an enclosure for some of the bins, but not others.
Right. Mr. Olfak?
So then, let me ask a quick question. You obviously have no problem enclosing the waste-related ones in some kind of enclosure. Using that same enclosure, even though it's not needed because there's not waste in it for the recycle bins, do you have any problem with that? Just as long as it's not masonry, you just would rather have that?
Are we talking about keeping the dumpster?
No. Your recycle
Oh,
bins,
masonry, yeah.
at least.
The masonry is only relevant to the dumpster enclosure. It's not relevant to the totes.
Okay.
None of these totes are, okay, go ahead.
So, you've talked about already enclosing the totes. Every single tote, including the recycling ones, are you planning on enclosing?
I can enclose the recycling ones, they don't need it, but I will.
Okay, and that's good enough.
And you know what? I can enclose them in steel.
Okay.
It doesn't have to be wood, that's just a kind of a graphical representation, of what I'm trying to propose.
So you're already planning on doing the enclosures.
Yeah.
So then, I almost want to say that other variance isn't needed because you're already planning on enclosing them anyway. So,
This is all about rats.
actually, here's what I'll do. I'll make a motion to grant waiving the screening enclosure around recyclable containers, totes or bins, because I don't see the need for, now, let me just say that and then I'll say my reason why.
All right, well, we have a motion.
Where's the trash going?
Not the trash, just the recycling.
Well, before we discuss it too much, we need to.
I'm gonna jump in and say that we're not going out and determining which one has scraps of food on the cardboard and call it, that's not, we're not doing that. They all are enclosed or they're not.
Okay.
I mean, I think we really need to simplify this. Are we okay just waiving this requirement or not?
That's correct.
Then I'm gonna motion to deny variance A.
I second.
All right. Any other discussion? Mr.
He's
Olfak?
already suggested that he has no problem enclosing both the waste as well as the recycling bins. So because of that, I'm fine with him using some other material other than masonry that's maybe metal or something like that. I don't.
That's not what it says, though.
Yeah, you're confusing things, so.
I'm just saying I have no problem with him enclosing with it. So, and he doesn't seem to have a problem enclosing it. So therefore.
No, but your motion is to.
Deny.
Deny
to
A.
Deny.
Right.
At which point the enforcement mechanism goes back to the city and they determine the standards and the products that are used in the process of getting this done, not us. We're gonna let the city do their job.
Mr. Chairman, I don't mean to be disrespectful, but maybe we could table that portion and resubmit new plans with the materials that the enclosures are going to be made out of, other than masonry.
I mean, I'll defer to staff on this one.
We get into nuances. The request was to waive the enclosure entirely, not have to have any of the
Right,
refuse
that's just it,
containers.
yeah.
A variance request to waive the material standard is a new variance
Right,
request.
that's not even in front of us.
That's not what's being considered, that's not what was asked for in the variance request.
So,
Because we don't want a dumpster anymore.
right.
So, may I take a bite at this apple? So, but if the petitioner is willing to withdraw that request, it would be a new request and a new case in a new file number, and can they do that swiftly?
For the material of the construction, the material, if the petitioner wants to follow that process, yes.
My question is, what's that process? Is it a year wait to be able to do that, or is it a month they could come back?
It's a new variance request. We would need some type of drawing illustrating what the material is so that we know what the required materials are, what's being presented, to know the difference.
We actually had a motion and a second on the table there. and,
We do, so we have a motion to deny on item 5A. Without stipulations, without anything, a simple motion to deny. So I'm gonna go ahead and call for the vote on that. All those in favor of the motion to deny waiving the screen enclosure for refuse and recyclable containers signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
No.
No.
All right, so that motion to deny does pass 6-2. We had 2 nays, I believe. All right.
No.
Deb, were you yes or no?
Who are the no's? I'm sorry.
Yes.
Okay, so, all right.
Yes and no.
All right, you got that? Okay. All right, so that item is done. Obviously, you're free to approach the city again in terms of how you want to proceed with alternate materials and so forth. And I thank you for your time, gentlemen. That was a little more convoluted than it needed to be. All right, so moving right along to other business, which is the,
Thank you.
thank you both. The meeting schedule and religious holidays for 2020. Are there any comments on that?
Hopefully everybody had a chance to look at the dates.
The April date is the first night of Pesach.
It's the first night, or it's the beginning of it, or it's the first day?
First official night.
It's okay for me, because
I couldn't
No, you're out?
you can't.
go.
I mean, I thought it was a mistake that the plan commission meeting had a Tuesday on the first night of Yom Kippur.
Did they really?
Yeah.
That's pretty tacky.
Yeah,
So I
Passed off
I
my
think with
meetings.
deference to our Jewish friends that we should, the first night of Passover, find a different week.
Personally,
I
don't
don't
really-
have a problem.
I don't celebrate Passover anyway. So
I do, but we only celebrate it on the
Yeah.
weekend because we have too many.
Well, we should not only consider
Yeah.
board members, but
We have to
public as
consider-
Well,
well.
I think
That's right.
we got most of us here at the table, I think.
Well,
There's
no,
another,
no,
there's
no.
another 8 of us
That's
throughout.
unfortunate.
I think there's
That's
12
not true.
altogether.
There's
We're
a
growing.
handful of people trying to build a very large Jewish community inside of Royal Oak, and I think,
And we welcome them.
We,
We welcome.
We got the shul, yeah, we got the shul.
so. Would you want a alternative date suggested, or does,
We should determine an alternate date so that we can.
in,
release
to
this.
work in conjunction with what the planning commission does that then make sense to push it back a week so things flow orderly if the planning commission passes something and then it comes to us next?
The real truth
Not
is Clyde's
necessarily.
wife won't let him come on Passover.
Not necessarily. We can look at if you, if we bring up, we bring up some of the links that were included will take us to different online calendars, and we can look at alternate dates the week before, week after. In the meantime, if you see any other holidays that you think are in conflict.
Yeah, it's Sukkot, but that's not really
No, that's,
you don't have to be home early on that one.
get on my nerves, scroll.
April 2nd instead of April
It's Holy
9th, maybe?
Thursday.
It makes no difference to me. If somebody wants to offer a motion before or after, I'll vote for either.
Fine, I move to move the April date to April 2nd.
Well, let's make sure we review.
Oh, to make sure
so that
it's
there's
nothing else.
Nothing else. Because all we did in the memo was highlight the days where you have your normal, where your regularly scheduled meeting. We
I'm
didn't look at
impressed
the
that
alternate
you
days.
called it Pesach and not Passover.
Yeah.
What's that?
I'm impressed that it's called
Yeah.
Pesach and
Oh.
not Passover.
Find someone to do that.
I don't see anything for April 2nd. It seems to be free.
So the motion is to modify the schedule to move the April 9th meeting to April 2nd.
We have a motion, I didn't hear a second.
I'll support that.
And we have a second from the second. From the 9th to the 2nd.
April.
Who was?
Oh, the motion was Mr. Obeck and supported by Mr. Kroll. All right, I will call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Is that all we have for the good of Royal Oak?
That was plenty.
Would somebody please make a motion to send us home?
Motion to go home.
Support.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned.